GBH News.
Nicely done,
Thank
Marjorie.
you very much. I've been practicing.
Covered every base.
I've been working on it.
You are amazing. So, in any case, hi to you. Over the weekend, it was on 60 Minutes, President Biden declared the pandemic is over, even though the CDC's data still shows more than 400 people dying every day in America because of COVID.
The pandemic is over. We still have a problem with COVID. We're still doing a lot of work on it. But the pandemic is over. If you notice, no one's wearing masks. Everybody seems to be in pretty good shape.
As you probably know, many doctors and public health types are critical of the president's announcement, which comes as the administration is also pushing people to get a new variant-specific COVID booster. So we'd like to hear from you at 877-301-8970. Is the president just reaffirming what our experience has been for months, that life has pretty much returned to normal, or is his declaration of a post-COVID America premature and problematic? Again, 877-301-8970 for calls and texts, and you can tweet us at BOS Public Radio. What was your reaction to what the president had to say, Marjorie?
Well, you know, I'm with Lena Wynn. She's a great public health person. She's on television all the time. She said the pandemic is something that upends our daily lives, alters the way we work, go to school, worship, and socialize. We are going back to doing all those things. I mean, it doesn't bother me that he said that. I think it has to do with some political considerations, the midterm elections coming up.
You think so?
Yes, I do. But what I'm worried about, though, is I don't want him to get rid of this emergency declaration, because I did not know that as soon as he does, 15 million people are going to lose Medicaid coverage. Yeah. So that is a huge problem for people, 15 million people not to have health insurance. But, you know, people are going back. I mean, we're all here at the library today. You almost don't see many masks in the library today. I haven't seen you wearing a mask in quite some time, Jim.
Every grocery store I go into, I wear a mask.
There you go. Every grocery store you go into. But I do think we are back, I hope, to some kind of normal. And now, when people get COVID, long COVID is still scary. 1 in 5 people could wind up with long COVID. That's pretty scary. I know a lot of people talk about being tired and brain fog. But I think we've gotten to the point where we think if you get it, you're not going to get that sick, provided you've been vaccinated and boosted. And now we can get another shot if you want to get yet another shot. So what do you think?
I think 400 people dying a day belies almost everything you just said. It's 150,000 people a year. You know what percentage of kids under 5 have gotten a booster? 6%.
It's really tiny.
You know what percentage of people have gotten at least one booster shot? 32%. So if
you know what's really shocking?
If you're
20% have gotten nothing.
If you are one of those people, and the President of the United States goes on 60 Minutes and says the pandemic is over, even if technically he may be right and it's endemic now is the line, are you going to get that booster? I don't think so. And if you read the comments, predictably, it was politically, you know, you said he did it because of the midterms to show there's something accomplished.
I don't know. I'm guessing.
Of course he did. However, did you see the Republican response? Even semi-responsible Republicans like Richard Burr, who's the key from North Carolina, who's the key Republican on some Senate Health Committee, you know what he's saying? So when does he withdraw the mandate that federal employees must be vaccinated? Another Republican immediately said, so wait a second, the extension of the pause on repayment of federal loans is predicated on this being an emergency. Of course, it is technically still an emergency. When's he going to withdraw? I think politically it gave an opening for totally self-serving politicians to say those kinds of things, and gives an out to people sitting on the fence about boosters and vaccines in general to do what they got to be doing. It's 150,000 people dying a year.
When 1/5 of Americans have had no vaccines, and we've been in a panic state now for all these months, I don't know that it's going to make that much of a difference. You know, we have a lot of health problems in the United States of America, and a lot of people seem not to care that much about those health problems.
Well, you know, they're going to care even less when the President of the United States says so. You know, by the way, this whole notion, splitting hairs, well, he didn't say it's over. He said the pandemic is over. The problem with that whole thing, the average person, including me and you, is not a public health expert. When he gets on television and says the pandemic is over, you know what the translation is? COVID's over. The problem is over. We don't need to take precautions. You don't need to do anything. And it provides an opening, in my opinion, for irresponsible individuals and irresponsible politicians to exploit it. So I wish he hadn't said it. 877-301-8970 is our phone number.
Get any further here, we should point out that Jim has set a world record for getting MRIs in the state of Massachusetts. So you are a little bit.
Well, I don't care what the president says.
You are a little bit of a hypochondriac.
I would be willing to bet, there are 2 of us standing here, is that correct?
Yes.
I'd be willing to bet that one of us got the special new booster already,
Well,
and one did not.
You know why I didn't get the special new booster?
No, let me think
Because I just got my second booster in July, and I've been advised from what I've been reading.
2 months.
2 months. Well, that
2 months.
is now August, September.
That's 2 months.
Well, I'm at the end of July. So I have to
That
the
is
end of September.
totally made up. It is so clear. You have no idea when you got it in July.
I do.
You
I
just
have my
thought
little card.
quickly.
I think I got it July 31st.
Can we see your card? Let's see your card.
I'll
Why don't
show
you
the
hold it
card.
up to the camera? The
During
streaming.
during the break, Jim,
Yeah,
I'll
that'll be
show you the
happening.
card.
877-301-8970.
I'm looking for it now.
And by the way, a lot of people in his own administration. Oh, where's my phone? Where are my earbuds? Where's my wallet? Where's my whatever?
Well, that's a good point, Jim. I can't find my wallet.
Exactly. 877-301-8970. Again, I'm not responding to what the president said as a scientific matter because I don't have the skills. I'm responding to it as a practical matter. It just provides an off-ramp, to use that horribly overused expression, for a lot of irresponsible people to be even more irresponsible.
I found my wallet.
Let me see the card.
Thank God.
Let me see the card.
I'm looking for the card right now.
Okay, fine. 877-301-8970.
Oh, I had the numbers backwards.
What is it?
It was July 13th, not July 31st.
Oh, so that's not the end
so I can go
of
right
July.
Now. I can go right now.
Oh,
I'll go right
I
now,
see.
Jim. Take care of it.
By the way,
But the issue
if
is,
anybody, excuse me, if anybody thinks that it is not beyond remarkable that Marjorie actually had her card with her, forget the date. That is
I've got it on my phone.
unbelievable.
I've got it on my phone, and I've got it in my wallet. I've got it laminated, Jim.
You have?
Yes, I do.
You're not supposed to have it laminated.
I know you're not.
You know why?
Because they have to put stickers on for the
Exactly.
extra vaccinations.
Thank you
I know,
very
but
much.
they do a very nice job at CVS. Anyway, the number's 877-301-8970. Do you care that the president said that COVID is over? Are you upset that he said, like Jim is, that COVID is over?
He didn't say COVID's over. He said the pandemic
Is over. That's right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
To me, it's kind of like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I think we're acting differently now, and it's you're not. If you're vaccinated and you're boosted, you are probably not going to get very sick, and I think that's what people are thinking now, and that is
except for the 150,000 people who were dead in 2022.
the people that are dead,
other than them,
maybe people that were not vaccinated, or they
Exactly.
may be people. But if you are vaccinated, which most of us are, then I think you're not that worried.
Okay, so there are two questions. It's not just the question. Marjorie posed one question, which is, do you agree with the president the pandemic's over? The other question, which obviously is at least as important, does anyone believe that Marjorie was able to find her vaccination card in about 30 seconds?
It's in my wallet, and it's on my phone.
Kathy, you're driving in a car. We hope you're complying with law. You're on Boston Public Radio. Thank you for being here. Hi.
Hi there. How are you guys?
We're good.
Good. So my comment and my concern is that I think because of fatigue, mental fatigue, which is very real and very important to acknowledge, that we are using things like noticing that hardly anybody wears a mask anymore as evidence that COVID is over. I heard David Agus on CBS This Morning the other day pointing to that fact, just saying, yeah, well, hardly anybody wears a mask. And Gail Singh looked at him and said, well, I wear it when I go on the plane. She looks so worried. And he never returned back to saying, yes, masks are still important.
Good for her. Well,
yeah, I mean, but it didn't really get acknowledged in that way. And I know people are tired of them. I get it. I hate wearing it myself, but long COVID is real, and people still do get it, even when they're fully vaccinated.
They do. That's absolutely true.
And by the way, I think I'm not going to get into this because Marty's going to mock me. I told you, I thought I was really exhausted after my second COVID bout for months. And I think that may have been a long COVID experience. Kathy, thanks for a great call.
Supposedly it's 1 in 5 people get COVID. One of the texters says, if an airplane carrying 100 people crashed every 6 hours every day, would people still fly?
What the hell does that mean?
Well, he's talking about 400 people dying a day.
Oh, I'm
That's
sorry.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, but again,
that's actually an interesting
I
point.
think, and as far as I've been reading and studying, if you're dying from COVID, you probably have other issues going on, like not having been vaccinated,
right, and,
not having been
and
boosted.
Is it not even more likely that you don't get vaccinated if you hear the president said something like, this whole thing is over?
Well, I think you have to face the fact that, like I said before, that if a fifth of people didn't get vaccinated through this whole long ordeal, what he says at this point is not going to matter.
877-301-8970. Jennifer, you're in Boston, as are we, and you're on Boston Public Radio. Hey there.
Hi, yeah, I was talking to my teenagers about do they want to get a booster because I feel they're old enough to be part of making the decision. I have a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old, and both of them concluded that even if we're not officially in a pandemic, if we have a disease that could become endemic or a repeated problem, like maybe the flu is a repeated problem, they should get whatever boosters they need to resist that, so
Love
they
your
can stay
kids.
healthy and not contribute to another pandemic.
Wait a
So that's
second.
high
They
school
wait.
kids who went to
Your
Boston
14
public
and
schools.
your 14 and 17-year-old came to that conclusion.
Yes, I asked them,
That's
do you want to
great.
get a booster
Great.
next week? Because I can get them for you at work, and they're
Great.
like, absolutely, sign me up.
Great. So you're proud of them?
So Boston Public Schools teaching some. So hopefully that helps.
That's great. I love your kids for it. Thanks, Jennifer, for the call.
Jennifer, are you still there?
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering what it's like for your kids in schools. Are their teen colleagues wearing masks or not?
Some kids are wearing masks in both of my kids' schools, but there are ones who have either a compromised immune system or chronic health problems like repeated bronchitis.
Yeah.
A couple kids who have like unstable diabetes. So it makes sense. And no one gives them a hard time about it. People are very supportive.
Yeah, it seems
Jennifer,
like
thanks.
that is the way it is from everything I've seen, is that if you have a concern or you have someone at home that you're concerned about, then you are wearing masks, otherwise not. My little granddaughter has got her vaccine.
You showed
She's
me
not
a
even-
beautiful
she-
video
Yep,
of
she's
your
not even,
little granddaughter's
she's only
one.
10 months old and she's all vaxxed up, so
By
I'm
the
very
way,
happy about that.
Red Texas and says dead people don't vote. Now that may be true, but Donald Trump says they vote. So there is at least a debate about that question, Red, but thank you anyway for your text. 877-301-8097. By the way, do you think that, Chuck Todd has said this to us a lot. One of the things he loves about Joe Biden through the years that he's been interviewing, Senator, Vice President, President, is he says whatever's on his mind. Do you think he went into the show expecting to say the pandemic is over? I would say absolutely not.
I think the most interesting thing in that interview, which we maybe can talk about later with John
What's that?
King, is that he probably is not going to run again. I mean, which is a good thing. He shouldn't run
Well, he
again.
didn't say that exactly. His staff has been emphatic that he's absolutely running. He was not emphatic. He said he's not going to make the decision yet, and I agree with you. I think that's an opening to say I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I think it is an opening too, because I think that the sense is that if he said something too soon, then you become a lame duck, you'd lose your power, et cetera, et cetera. So on the other hand, he could do a lot of things that he might be hesitant to do because he's concerned about re-election. It might free him up to do things that he might otherwise do that we need to get done.
Because he knows he doesn't have to run.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sarah from Clinton, thank you for calling.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi.
Hey.
So I just sent my mom to the hospital. She's 99. She has COVID.
Oh,
It was about just 2 hours ago. I mean, I've been on the phone since, just with the healthcare people. But anyway, I would say it's not over.
how's she doing, Sarah?
She's okay. She's an ox. But I wish we learned that it's not okay to make other people sick.
I should have made that point. It's probably the most important argument on my side and your side, Sarah. That's a really wonderful point.
But
By the
I
way,
think-
is your mother vaccinated and all that sort of thing?
She had 3 shots. I haven't been able to get her the 4th one because she hasn't been well enough, and I've had to cancel 2 appointments.
Well, we'll be thinking about her. We wish her luck. Text us or email us and let us know how she's doing. Sarah, thank you for the call. We
But
appreciate it.
I think those people who are worried for whatever reason,
Yeah.
they wear masks, and that's fine. I don't feel like I'm running around.
Do you wear a
making-
mask anywhere?
Yeah, if I was going to go on an airplane, which I haven't been on, I'd definitely wear a mask. If I was on a train, I'd wear a mask. If I was on a bus, I'd wear a mask any place I was close inside
A lot of people.
with other people. I don't like being in restaurants and
Do
bars.
you eat
that are
inside
really
in
close.
restaurants?
I did the other night.
And
yeah.
how'd you feel about that?
A little nervous.
Yeah.
A little nervous. I mean, my daughter went to a wedding. 20 people came back from the wedding with COVID. I mean, it's still
20
out.
people?
Yes.
When was this?
2 weeks ago.
20 out of how many?
Oh, like 200.
That's a lot, though.
200 people
That's a lot.
inside. I mean, why are you having a wedding with 200 people inside? I don't know. Maybe it was 150 people, but quite a few people got COVID.
Lynn on YouTube posted, I have not and will not stop wearing my mask. I avoid indoor activities with unmasked people. No way I'm saying the pandemic is over. 877-301-8970 is our number. You want to take a break?
Sure. We're talking about whether or not the pandemic is over, as President Biden said on 60 Minutes the other night. He also said he may not run again. Jim is very, very upset that the president would say such a thing. And I think he's just facing the reality of the fact that almost nobody's wearing masks anymore unless you have the pre-existing condition, and that the normalcy that we've sought, whether you can go
From the GBH Newsroom,
I'm Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley. Much as people complain about what's going on in their news reporting in general, they have a high degree of trust and interest in local journalism. And a large part of that has to do with it's where they live. Anytime that you can do important stories about where people live, that's it. That's the whole ballgame.
part of your community. GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Tools of the Mind, the research and play-based curriculum combines professional development and a comprehensive pre-K and K curriculum designed to build self-regulation skills. Learn more at toolsofthemind.org. And Syngenics, a precision medicine company using autoantibody biomarkers for early diagnostics, patient stratification, and response prediction. Learn more at syngenics.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie, and we're live at the Boston Public Library. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about President Biden on 60 Minutes Sunday night, saying we have entered a post-COVID America, and saying the pandemic is over. And we want to know if you're comfortable with what he had to say. Give us a call or a text at 877-301-8970. Earlier in the show, Marjorie's explanation as to why she hasn't gotten this most recent booster is because it is not 2 months since her last booster. Now, of course, she checked her card.
That's right.
And, of course, it is more than 2
Little
months.
dyslexia there.
She said she had her card on her phone and her wallet. And Paul from Worcester has a really trenchant observation. He says, it's not at all surprising that Marjorie found her card in her wallet and on her phone. However, it is a bit surprising that she found her wallet and her phone, which I think are both very good points.
Paul from Worcester. Jim's
Thank
going
you
to give
both.
me your email, which I need for
Yeah,
purposes
Paul,
we'll
thanks
not
for the gifts.
mention.
As always, fabulous.
You know, Jim-
877-301-8970.
Oh, texter has a good question here. Jim,
What is it?
How many people die of cancer from PFAS? Those are the
Forever chemicals, yeah.
Every year, but no one is doing anything to remove the chemicals from everything from fast food wrappers to frying pans.
Well, actually, our
Paste
friends at Silent
Parade.
Spring and Newton are
Yes.
working relentlessly, as are other organizations.
They are, but there's a million stories in the Cape Cod Times about how the groundwater in Cape Cod is full of these PFAS things, and we don't. I mean, all around the country, our water systems are in terrible
Wait, so that's
shape.
an excuse? I mean,
No,
what is
but
that?
It's talking about how we don't do a lot of things that would help our health in
Right,
general.
and the argument for them is not, what flows from that is not, so let's not do other things we can. The argument is, let's do more things that are good for our public health, not fewer things, because we're not doing other things. You with me or not?
Right, but I think that we have a lot of health problems in the United States that we know about individually that we don't do anything about, don't we?
Yes, we do. We're the
Yeah.
fattest nation on earth, for
We're the
example.
I thought Mexico had beaten us.
Well, for the purposes
We're
of my
neck and
argument,
neck?
we're the fattest.
We're
No,
neck
we're
and-
jowl and jowl, I believe is the expression.
With Mexico. Okay, let's go to Marianne in Newport, Rhode Island. Hi, Marianne.
Hey, Marianne, what's up?
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to make a comment that, COVID is not like it used to be when the pandemic first happened.
Of course.
Now we have antiviral medications. We have shots. We have, ways to deal with it. And maybe what the president was talking about, maybe what he meant was that, the pandemic has changed over, the way it was when it...
Marianne, I think you nailed it, but I wish he had said exactly that, is that things are changed. Things are better. I happen to agree with Marjorie. The intention on his part, I don't think was to be grossly irresponsible, but was to assure people leading up to midterms that one problem had been conquered. The responsible and more honest position would be yours. We're doing a lot better. We have these vaccines. We have 3 boosters. We have Paxlovid and antiviral things, even though, Marianne, they're saying Paxlovid primarily works for really old people, not for the average population that is taking it. But he didn't say that. He went further, and I think it's dangerous because most people are not studying exactly what he said. The message that went out, in my estimation, is that COVID is over, and it's not. Marianne, fine call. Thank you for making it.
Susan from Plymouth said her sister had COVID last week, never felt so bad, still wiped out and sounds terrible. Susan says she can't wait for a shot and loves wearing a mask. I don't know if her sister was vaccinated and boosted or not. Lots of people are saying people that never had COVID before are getting COVID now. One person says they know 6 people who just got it in September. I can hear my neighbor coughing all day next door after catching it from her elementary school kid. And this person is self-employed and wants to make sure she stays healthy, because if she doesn't work, she doesn't get paid.
You know, by the way, in addition to 400 people or more still dying every day, you know, we have 60,000 new cases a day. And if 60,000 new cases are reporting a day, and most of us who do testing do home testing, would you agree 60,000 is probably, what, 100,000? I don't know, 80,000?
Yeah.
It's obviously much higher than 60,000. Those are really serious numbers, you know? And as the caller said before, it's not just serious for the individual who is doing the responsible things. It's serious because of the ability to infect other people who aren't that responsible.
But you're acting as though, besides taking away the emergency declaration, which would be a big problem, that this is affecting how people are acting.
I am exactly saying that.
Before 60 Minutes on Sunday, people weren't wearing masks, and they were eating dinner inside, and they were going to Fenway Park, and they were going to the theater, and all those kinds of things. It's not like we've had a sea change.
Was Senator Burr saying when are you going to remove the requirement that federal employees be vaccinated? No, he used that. I'm saying he didn't use it honestly. He used it irresponsibly to make political points, even though he's actually not running for re-election, just to, I assume, please his Republican colleagues. You don't provide an opening for people when the public health has been such a polarizing kind of thing. If this was like a classroom or a moot court thing, I would 100% agree with you and with Biden. It's not. It's in an America where people don't even believe in science anymore, Marjorie.
Sally from Nashua, New Hampshire. What do you think, Sally?
Hey, Sally.
Hi. Yes, I'd like to say long COVID.
Yeah.
We don't hear enough about it. It should be a public service message. There isn't anyone that I speak to that takes it seriously or even knows what it is. I wear a mask. The only way to protect yourself from long COVID is not you should have an immunization, and you should be careful, but a mask is the only thing that's going to keep us from long COVID. You may get a minor case of COVID, something equivalent to a light cold, but you are still prey to long COVID and what long COVID means. And that could be potential organ damage, heart damage. I already have a friend, more than one, with it. I don't understand why it's not brought up more, and that more people don't even know of it. So that's what I have to say.
You said it well, Sally, and I totally agree with you. Thank you very much for the call. I'm looking around the Newsfeed Cafe here. Mm-hmm. There's one person wearing a mask. And by the way, it's perfectly fine. That's your individual choice. It's not required. But the point that she's making is right. Almost nobody's wearing a mask anymore, except some are doing them in the settings you talked about. Crowded places like airplanes. I do grocery stores.
And obviously,
sort of
whenever
thing.
you go to a medical facility,
you have to.
whether it's a dentist or whatever, or any one of the hospitals or any place, they always have these. They have the huge sign still. You have to wear a mask.
Well, I'm pretty regularly in medical facilities, so I always have my mask with me.
You could have a Guinness Book of MRIs if you weren't in medical
you ever had an
facilities all
MRI?
the
I don't know
time.
if I've ever asked you.
No,
Do you know what it is, like kind of thing?
You go in a little coffin-like
It's like
machine.
they put you in a coffin.
Yeah.
It is the size of a coffin.
Yeah.
And they it's sort of like a super duper X-ray kind of thing.
What's the difference between that and like a scan?
It is a scan.
Oh, it is a scan. It's the same
but
thing.
it's really a close-up kind of thing. So you figure, even though I'm not Catholic, that you should have last rites given to you before you go into the machine.
And it makes a lot of noise, right?
It is
They
so
ask you
loud.
what kind of music you
How
want.
do you know all that?
Because I've read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is really a loud pounding kind of thing. And
Yeah.
they do music, or you can do news or whatever makes you happy.
Did you ask for Bruce Springsteen?
No, I actually listened to replays of Greater Boston, actually, if I could listen to myself.
Okay. 877-301-8970 is the number. Joe from Blackstone has a message, Jim.
What does he say?
He says, Jim had too much coffee this morning and Marjorie needs a squirt gun for every time Jim interrupts me.
877-301-8970. Make sure that guy's blocked. And at BOS Public Radio.
Some people are saying
Twitter
relatives
account.
that have gotten it that have been vaccinated and boosted have still gotten very sick. There was just someone who emailed that their sister was very sick or their brother was very sick.
But your basic point is accurate, is that you're much less likely to have serious illness or die if you're vaccinated. The data shows that.
Well, we just saw Biden had it twice. His wife had it twice.
He did have it twice,
They had
yeah.
that Pavlovox rebound thing,
Paxlovid.
right? Paxlovid, whatever it is.
That's what I had.
Yeah, you had that rebound too. I don't know if his wife did, but Biden certainly did.
Yeah.
A lot of people have had that.
I know. As I said, in the study on Paxlovid a couple of weeks ago, I forget who did it, suggested, and again, don't take any medical advice from me, not that you're about to, that it's pretty much ineffective for people who I think are under 60 or 70 or 80 or something. The older you are, the more effective Paxlovid is.
Well, we have the woman who just brought her 99-year-old mother to the hospital with COVID.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's, I don't know if it's her grandmother, maybe it's her great-grandmother, but she's over 100.
Yeah.
She got COVID.
Oh, geez. And how is she? Nothing? Is that really true?
Yeah. They thought this would be the final moment. No, she was fine. She was sick for a while. Now she's bounced right back.
877-301-8970. We have time for one or two more. Let's go to Sagamore and Olivia. Hello, Olivia.
Hello, Jim and Marjorie.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm on my break from Market Basket. So
love it.
Jim's favorite store.
Well, that's the one right over the bridge, right?
Yes.
I haven't been there yet. I'm going to do it someday. I'll come say hi. What's up, Olivia?
Come visit me. Come visit me. I do the bagels.
I will definitely visit you at the bagel department, Olivia. What's up?
Awesome. I just wanted to share a comment. My mom got COVID, I believe, February 2021. She's been dealing with long COVID still. She has lung damage, heart damage, liver damage, and but she doesn't live in fear at the moment. She just went on a trip to Minneapolis, I believe, last weekend. So, I mean, it sucks what happens, but she's not trying to make COVID, I guess, surround her life in a negative way.
Well, Olivia, you listed a lot of damage for your poor mom. I mean, is she able to get around like she could, or is she hampered?
So the funny thing is, the day that she found out she was positive, she had just finished a 5K run. She was an active runner.
Oh, my God.
Mind you, my mom is only 47, so she has all of these issues now, and she's still pretty young.
Wow, that's pretty scary. Now, was she vaccinated and boosted, and she still got all those problems?
So the vaccines had just rolled out. She had not gotten her first shot when she got sick.
Okay.
Hey, Olivia, before you go, how long you worked at Market Basket?
Oh, it's a really long story, but I had worked here when they first opened, left, went to the Plymouth location, went back to school. Now I'm back at the Sagamore.
How do you feel about them as an employer?
It's a really hard job. It's not for the weak, but it's pretty close-knit. Our location's struggling right now because we have very low staff, so I'm very busy.
I'll see you at the bagel department. I'm serious. Olivia, thank you very much for the call. You ever gone to the Market Basket right over the bridge?
Yes, I have.
You have?
It's a great
Is
one.
it huge? I assume it's huge.
It's big, and a lot of people just absolutely love it. Not to go in the summertime though, so much because the traffic is so terrible. We have someone, the medical people are always very upset about this. This is a gentleman. His wife is an RN, ICU, and he says what the president said makes him sick. He's gotten all the shots, worn an N95 since it started. I wish my fellow Americans cared more about each other. I'm tired of being worried and taking all the necessary precautions and blame those who aren't doing anything to help. So,
I'm with him.
Yeah, there's a lot of medical people that are facing scary stuff every single solitary day. Dentists, it'd be a little nerve-wracking to be a dentist all through this, wouldn't it?
For a lot of reasons.
For a lot of reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, coming up, we're going to talk to Trenny Kuznarek. Whoops, not Trenny Kuznarek. She used to be Trenny Kuznarek.
She was.
Now, she is Trenny Casey. She is a new bride, and she's from NBC Sports Boston. She's up next, 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio.
Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. At the same time, it's become a thriving market for guns made and sold in the U.S.
You can see a markup of 50% or more.
Weapons and ammo purchased in Florida are sold on the streets of Port-au-Prince. U.S. gun policies are largely to blame. Why gang violence in Haiti is an American problem, it's on the world.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Comcast Business, providing technology solutions for your starting or growing small business, including internet, phone, and Comcast Business Security Edge. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply, actual speeds vary. And The Lyric Stage, presenting Fabulation, or The Re-Education of Undine. A riches to rags story asking, can you ever really go home again? Now through October 9th. Tickets at lyricstage.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browder. She is Marjorie Rico. We're joined now by NBC Sports Boston anchor and reporter. What's her name again, Marjorie?
Trenny Casey.
Trenny Casey. She's also a BPR contributor. Hello, Trenny Casey. How are you?
Hello. I've put money on fifth year, 5-year anniversary of Sean and I being married that Marjorie stops calling me Trenny.
Well, it's not easy. It's not.
In fairness,
it's not easy.
In Marjorie's defense, yesterday
Yes.
I was typing my monologue and I would type Trenny and I typed KU and I was like, oh, nope, not anymore. C-A-S-E-Y.
I'd say 2 years and you'll get it right, pretty much. Nice to
It'll
see you,
take
Trenny.
some time.
Hey, so Trenny Kuznarek, let's talk about the WNBA, which we don't talk enough about. And we have a New England team in the final. So tell us about the Las Vegas Aces and the Connecticut Sun.
Yes, the Las Vegas Aces and the Connecticut Sun played in the WNBA Finals. It's different than the NBA Finals, which is the best of 7 series. WNBA is best of 5, which means you need to win 3. The Las Vegas Aces took a 2-0 series lead. They were the home team, so they played their first 2 games at home. They were up 2-0, and they looked like they were on their way to a sweep. But Connecticut really battled them in their game at home. Game 3 came back and won that game behind a great game from Alyssa Thomas. And then in Game 4, Connecticut gave the Vegas Aces another run for their money, but Vegas came through and they won their first ever WNBA championship. Also, the first sports championship for a Las Vegas professional team. And they did it. The best part, listen, the players are amazing, obviously.
What's that? Chelsea Gray, is she the
Chelsea Gray is the MVP.
I watch highlights of this woman. She is unbelievable.
Let's play a little sound.
Some really great talent in the WNBA.
There was a lot of excitement when the Las Vegas Aces won Game 4 of the WNBA championships against the Connecticut Sun, and here it is.
Amazing. Like I say all the time, like I wouldn't be where I am today without my teammates. But winning a championship is something that no one can ever take from you. And once you got that down, you are in the books forever.
That's Aja Wilson for the Aces.
Yeah, I thought they were going to...
Too much champagne.
It's the one I thought I was playing the wrong one. I wanted the one with the cheering, but that's okay. There was a lot of excitement when they won.
And there was also great crowds. Like if you watched it if you watched it all on TV, it was enthusiastic. Like it was loud. They were into the game. There were still tickets when I looked. I think they played Game 3 on Saturday, and I had looked on like a Friday. There were tickets available, but these were, I think in Vegas they were sellouts. This is a sport that it's. I know the growth is a little slow, probably for most people's liking, but there is growth in this sport. And Becky Hammond is the head coach of the Vegas Aces. There is no reason, guys, that she cannot coach for a long time and win a ton of championships. She coached under Greg Popovich.
In the NBA for San Antonio.
For San Antonio. She interviewed for the Milwaukee Bucks open position, which ended up going to Mike Budenholzer. And a lot of people feel that she should get a head coaching job in the NBA, and she still may get that. But she has taken this Vegas Aces team and just like flipped them out. I did a WNBA preview for NBC 10. We shot a little special on it, and I picked the Vegas Aces to win it all simply because of Becky Hammond.
So I want to know, we've heard a lot about the reason that Brittany Griner ended up she's in Russia.
Alleged reason.
No, it's because she was playing over there because of money.
Why she was there. I
yes.
think why the Russians took her.
Yes, and the money. And I'm wondering if there's any move afoot because of, it is pretty pathetic that you have to go play in another country to make money because we don't pay people what they are worth here.
Well, the issue becomes, listen, The NBA and the WNBA are very different. The WNBA players are not going to get paid when NBA players get paid. They just don't have the TV contracts. They don't have the revenue. They just don't have the same ticket sales, all of those things that contribute to what they should get paid. But Chris Gasper, a few months ago, wrote a great article that it was either Chris Gasper or it was in the Washington Post. Either way, he's a...
Close enough.
Whoever made the claim...
Yeah, he's a really good writer.
...is right, and that the NBA... who is a part sponsor, owner, whatever it is, backer of the WNBA, they should financially support it more than they do. Instead of just, like NBA players were going to these games. They were especially in Vegas, right, where it's a popular place for pro athletes to be. They were pretty big name stars watching these women play basketball. Like, guys are into it. NBA players are into the WNBA. I'd like to see them put their money where their mouth is and find a way that there's just a little bit more. Listen, no one's saying to you have to be equal pay, right? Like, it's not an equal job. It's not an equal season length. It is not the same in terms of revenue sales and ticket sales and television broadcast rights. Like, all those factor into what NBA players make. But there should be a way that there is some revenue sharing across, like, sponsors and league sponsors, team sponsors, advertisers, and whatnot, that can at least make it so that WNBA players don't feel like they have to play basically year-round basketball in order to make that kind of a living.
You know, speaking of money, though, I had Linda Pizzuti-Henry, CEO of the Globe, on TV with me after she joined a group of women making a $75 million investment in the WNBA. I mean, that's another route, is invest in a product that has potential. You know, the thing that I don't remember, Marjorie said to me this morning, why don't we have a team in Boston? And I asked Linda that question, and Marjorie said, what did she say? And unfortunately, I had to say, I can't remember. Why don't we have a team in Boston?
I don't know. I was hoping you had the answer from Linda Pizzuti. I don't know.
I did get the answer from Linda
But you
Pizzuti.
just don't remember
I don't remember what it was.
I don't know why it is either, because the NBA is very popular here. And it's in
Connecticut. Do they even have an NBA team?
Well, no, the reason they're there is because women's basketball in particular in Connecticut is huge. And so many UConn players go on to play in the WNBA, to play in the pros. So it's a natural. So I think that might be part of the reason why, you guys, so that there isn't I think a lot of people because it's the Boston area go down to Mohegan Sun to watch the Connecticut Sun play. And I think that they don't want to be splitting loyalties and splitting it still is in comparison to the NBA, it's still a relatively small fan base. And so you don't want to be, is it robbing Peter to pay Paul?
Well, they can put it further north, like in Haverhill, like the Haverhillians, or in any case. We're talking. Can we stay on basketball for a minute?
I'm just giving Jim like that.
The conventional wisdom is Adam Silver is the best commissioner in sports. He took a lot of heat over a recent suspension and fine for I think it's fair to say, racist and misogynistic, at least racist and misogynistic comments from an owner. We have sound from Silver answering a very interesting question we'll play in a minute. But for those who weren't following this, explain what the owner did and what Silver did to him.
So Robert Sarver was accused of using the N-word 5 times in a conversation, to which he says he was just repeating what someone else said. But the panel and the judge also found in this independent investigation of a hostile work environment, found that it was a terrible work environment for women, that he was constantly commenting on their appearances, making inappropriate comments to them, gestures, commenting on what they're wearing. Basically, it felt like a place that women did not want to go to work. They didn't feel safe in their workplace. And now something similar happened years ago with it's Donald Sterling. It is from the Clippers, who made racist comments that were caught on tape, and he was forced to give up his ownership rights for the LA Clippers. It was not tolerated. In fact, what sort of set Adam Silver on this path as being someone who is intolerant of intolerance and would not accept racism and misogyny was how quickly he said, no, we are taking your ownership away. This is a league that is built on the backs of black players. Like, we cannot have someone like you running a team. Well, now, and I don't want to step on what he says in case this is what he's going to say in his soundbite that we have to play, but now he is making a list of excuses for Robert Sarver, and you know how we need to take into account the entire person.
Well, for whatever it's worth, he was asked a really good question by a reporter, which was essentially, if an employee of the Phoenix Suns had said the exact same thing the owners did, would he have gotten and by the way, he was fined $10 million. The guy's a billionaire, so it's not a lot of money.
No.
Would he...
And he's suspended for a year.
Exactly. Would he or she have been treated the same way as the owner was? And here's what Silver had to say.
There are particular rights here of someone who owns an NBA team as opposed to somebody who's an employee. The equivalent of a $10 million fine and a 1-year suspension, I don't know how to measure that against a job, but I have certain authority by virtue of this organization, and that's what I exercise.
I have no idea what that means. All I know, he's really uncomfortable. I saw the video, and people like LeBron James and the president of the union, who plays for his damn team, said
they should take the team away. And I don't understand. The only thing I can think of, guys, as to why they did not take the team away is because when they stripped Donald Sterling of his ownership, I think that it gave, in the eyes of the owners, it gave Adam Silver too much power. And let's be honest, most of the owners of these teams are white, middle-aged men and who have lived in a world for a long time where when they used to pinch the butts of their secretaries and talk about how cute they were, that was perfectly okay. And as long as you're not using a racial epithet, if you're only quoting someone else, well, why can't I say it? And they have all these excuses. I think it's difficult for Adam Silver. I think he has been stripped of his power. That's not to make excuses for Adam Silver, but it is the only reasoning I can think of for someone who has been at the forefront of so many progressive movements in sports, not just in the NBA, but in sports.
So just one last question. So he's the commissioner. They could fire him.
And the owners are his bosses, right?
They could get rid of him.
They could get rid of him. If he's not doing their bidding, he could get rid of them. But you are going to get backlash. To me, if I'm the Phoenix Suns, and I know, if he's the owner, I suppose there's not much that you can do. I don't know who owns the owner. But if it starts to affect your team, where let's just say, for argument's sake, Chris Paul demands a trade and says, I'm not playing for this team. I'm not getting out there and playing for an owner who is fine, referring to me as the N-word and, my sister, my wife, my girlfriend, my friends, my colleagues, treating women that way. I'm not doing it. Chris Paul is very influential in this league. I mean, he's a guy who's
President of the Union.
President of the Union. He's also at the end of his career. He's been dying to win a title. That's why he's been with the Suns for so long. Let's say he says to Devin Booker, who's their star point guard, buddy, let's sit out. Let's sit out. He'll sit out. You think they won't follow LeBron James and Chris Paul? I think those two actually have an opportunity here to do something and start sort of a groundswell movement to force the hand of the NBA, or at the very least for Robert Sarver to say, this is now going to be a business investment that hurts me. I'm going to sell the team for my own benefit.
We're talking to Trenny Casey, is her name, about sports.
So let's talk about baseball on this Latino Day celebration. Tell us about it.
So I kind of laughed when this was sent to me because listen, there was an all-Latino lineup on Robert Clemente Day. Roberto Clemente Day. But there's to me, I didn't understand why it was news.
Because every day is
Because
Latino
every
Day.
day, yes. I didn't I saw this and I was like, okay. I saw the headline on ESPN and I was like, okay, well, if you read the article, Kevin Cash says this was literally just the best lineup against a right-handed pitcher that I went out. So the article, I should explain what the article is. The article in ESPN is all Latino lineup on Roberto Clemente Day. Roberto Clemente, if you know, was not just a great baseball player for the Pittsburgh Pirates, but a humanitarian. He died in a plane crash, actually delivering supplies, I think
Nicaragua, but I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm not 100% sure, but to a Central American country. And he is now revered. Now, if you win the Roberto Clemente Award, you are honored as the person in your organization and in Major League Baseball who has done the most for the community. It is about the person you are, not the player you are. So when I saw this, I thought, oh, okay, so then they all donated all this money, or they all started another organization. It was like, no, they just started a baseball lineup. And I was like, oh, so it was like every other Tuesday in baseball. Because I think it's 32% of Major League Baseball players are Latino. It is the second largest ethnic group next to white people. Now, had it been an all-black lineup, that would have been news.
What percentage of Major League players?
7.7. I looked it up today. I actually looked it up because I wanted to
8%.
under 8%.
Hold on, under 8% what?
Are black players
Black.
in Major League Baseball.
Wasn't
Yeah.
Jackie Bradley for a while until he was cut? The only black player on the Red Sox.
Yep, on the Red Sox.
So why is there such a huge percentage of Latino players in baseball?
Because it's so big in their home countries.
Yeah.
Like the Dominican Republic is it's what those kids play. Like, you know how in a lot of European countries or African countries, these kids play soccer, right? From the time that they can pick up a ball.
Yeah.
That's the same in these Central American and Caribbean countries and Latin American countries. It is just their passion and their pastime. And so they are born and raised on the game. But also there is a dark side to it, not to always bring in the negative, but there is so much talent in these places, and obviously many of them are overrun with poverty and issues. That Major League Baseball has at least been trying to fix the system so that basically, smugglers can't go in and convince, like they go in and convince some of these kids, like, I'm going to make you a Major League Baseball star and you're going to pay me 50, 60% of your salary going forward, but you have to pay me to get you over there and your family has to do this. And they're robbing these kids blind of money that maybe they're going to make millions someday, but some never do. There's really some interesting reporting on this about sort of the dark side of going to these countries and finding, a pipeline of players to Major League Baseball.
Before we leave this, though, his humanitarian work did stand out at a time when that kind of thing was not happening like it is now. But I want to say I am the only one on this stage, I think age may have something to do with it, who actually saw Roberto Clemente playing. Used to play against my Phillies when he played for Pittsburgh. You should go on Google and check out this is the most beautiful baseball player. Best arm I ever saw, one of the best fielders ever. So fluid and beautiful in the field. Plus, he was a great hitter. And obviously,
what year was
1922, I saw him for the first time. I don't know.
I was going to ask what year he died, Jim, because I don't even know if I was alive when he was alive.
I would say you probably were not. In any case, check him out, Roberto Clemente.
So, Trey Kuznarek, you run marathons. Jim and I, actually.
A long time
ago. And that's a pretty long way, 26 miles.
Pretty long way.
These people are running
Hopkinton to Boston.
Yeah.
Sort of, approximately, yeah.
48-hour races. I mean, they're going like round the clock.
So I thought this, like, I always send you guys like the crazy endurance athlete articles I find in the New York Times.
Yeah.
I don't know who it is at the New York Times who's my spirit animal in the science these, but I'm fascinated by them.
So am I, actually.
So there's this small sort of like cult-like status among endurance athletes where you do these multi-day events, right? So, and it's not set necessarily like we talked about Badwater a few weeks ago, and the 76-year-old who like crossed the finish line but wasn't an official finisher or whatever. It's like 100 miles, and it's from the top of Mount Whitney to Death Valley, and it's this test of endurance and strength and mental fortitude. These races are, say it's 2 days, it's 48 hours, and it's how many miles can you run in 48 hours? So everybody finishes. There isn't like a set mile marker you need to meet or time you need to meet. It's just like, can I run for 2 days straight? Woo! Let's see if I can do it.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is,
Some of them
there
are
are
really
so
old.
many. I don't want to say old because I think old is relative now, but there are people that you would like, ages of people you're like, why are you still doing that? The number of people in this article who are 60, 67, 75, 82, and I'm like, what are you doing running for 2 days? But they love it. It's this community. It's like this, and it's all sort of like older. I think the person who won it is like 47 years old. Like everybody's a little bit, they're not in their peak athletic form. Let's just put it that way. You're not at like, you're not 27 years old and you're at like, well, even him, he hasn't looked.
Yeah.
We didn't even put that story in. I can't believe that he's not going to play on Wednesdays.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Now,
Smashing his tablet.
Now that you've mentioned my guy here, how is he doing?
Wait,
Tom?
you didn't know that he's not playing on Wednesdays? He's not practicing on Wednesdays.
I don't really follow.
Well, Tom Brady is 2-0, but I would say he's had a pretty pedestrian start. Like he has not looked. He isn't lighting it up, right? Like he did have a really great touchdown throw in the win over the Saints, and I stupidly picked the Saints in that game because he's lost to the Saints so many times. But yeah, he's just kind of looks. Honestly, he looks disinterested.
But forget that. How can you not show up to practice 1 day a week? in the middle of the season?
To
I don't
rest?
get
Because you're Tom Brady.
And you
So
wanna
what
rest
we are
your
trying to
arm.
figure out, and what we're all trying to so there is a difference of, am I just not practicing? Am I physically not throwing the ball on Wednesday because it's what's best for my health at 45 years old? Or is it, but I'm still going to meetings, I'm still there, I'm still on the sidelines,
I
I'm
think
still
he's
with my
getting
teammates.
Botox treatment on
So-
Wednesdays, don't you?
Oh my God, does his face move? Not to be too gossipy, but
No,
what
I
is
am-
going
yeah, I'm
on
not
with
kidding.
this?
I know.
He's got so many fillers and Botox and like
hair transplants.
And hair. It's like, buddy, you are gonna look like,
What does Giselle think about
Plasto
that?
Man.
That's what we want to know.
That's a very good question.
Yeah,
and
I
you're
guess
the
she likes
reporter
it.
to get to the bottom of it,
Yeah, I
Marjorie.
guess so.
Are you pals with Giselle?
Well, didn't you send me the thing about Elle
I did.
magazine with Giselle on the motorcycle with no pants on?
I didn't notice that she didn't have pants
Well,
on. You and I are looking at different
underwear.
things.
She had
but-
underwear on. She was not. She was bare legged from the underwear down.
But yes, Marjorie, he is told the Buccaneers that he wants 2 consecutive off days. So Tuesday's like the sort of blanket off day in the NFL. Like it's just sort of understood.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Tuesday's off for every team, unless of course you have a Thursday night game and then your schedule gets shifted.
okay.
So Tuesday's like, you'll always notice football players always do charity events on Mondays and Monday nights.
Oh, really?
Yes, because they can go out and they can
wow.
like drink and have a good time, and then they have Tuesday off to totally recover, and then they go back. And usually on Wednesday you implement your offense. On Thursday you usually implement your defense. On Friday you kind of fine tune things. Saturday's a walkthrough, and then if you're home you just play the next day. Or if it's Saturday you walk through and then you travel. So now the Buccaneers are having to switch their whole schedule. They're having to shift it. They're not going to have to implement their offense on Thursday, their defense on Wednesday, which offenses are always more complex than defense. Plus, and did you see him throw a temper tantrum?
Yes.
We had a great line yesterday on our show that
He threw his iPad,
as many
whatever it is.
tablets, he threw as many iPads as he did touchdown passes.
Big time,
on
right
Sunday.
into the. That's a good line.
Yeah.
So just to be clear for people making notes here, Monday you practice, and if you do an event, you do it. Tuesday you have a day off. Wednesday you get Botox. Thursday you go back to practice. Now let me tell you, I'm going to do something before the segment's over that I hate in radio. I already said go to YouTube for something. I hate when people do that. I'm going to do it again. Kyler Murray for the Arizona Cardinals. I have never
watch that
seen a
comeback?
quarterback escape capture by the defense and run for a touchdown. That was like a minute long. It was unbelievable.
Was that the college game?
No, the Arizona
Cardinals against the Las Vegas Raiders.
Fabulous.
The Raiders were up 20-0 at half, and the Arizona Cardinals came
In
back
overtime.
and won in overtime.
But
and
you
I
got
had
to watch.
run
You
for a
got to
fumble.
Google the quarterback. It was just
There are some
unbelievable.
good
Marjorie actually
games.
isn't Googling anything because all she cares about is whether Giselle approves
wearing pants
of
or
the
not.
Botox and if she's wearing pants.
She was wearing underwear. But let me tell
I'm
you.
not sure of that, by the way.
She's got long legs.
Oh, I
That's
hadn't
all I
noticed
have
that,
to say.
Marjorie. Thank you.
She is a lovely lady.
What's her name again,
gorgeous.
Marjorie?
Giselle Bundchen.
No, what's her name?
Oh, Trenny Casey.
Thank you very
Trenny
much.
Casey
Thank you.
from NBC Sports Boston.
Nice
Thank you
to
very
see you,
much,
Trenny
Trenny
Casey.
Casey. Up
Be
next,
well.
Suffolk County District Attorney Kevin Hayden is going to join us here at the library. You're listening to 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And North Shore Music Theater, Little Shop of Horrors, the camp classic sci-fi musical comedy, is coming to the stage at Bill Haney's North Shore Music Theater from September 20th to October 2nd. More at nsmt.org. It's the struggle we still don't want to face. Examine the murky history of America's response to one of the greatest humanitarian crises of the 20th century. The U.S. and the Holocaust continues tonight at 8 on GBH2.
I'm investigative reporter Chris Burrell, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Ahead on Boston Public Radio, we're live at the Boston Public Library. We'll talk with Suffolk DA Kevin Hayden, who's facing no Republican challenge in this November's election after beating Boston City Councilor Ricardo Arroyo in the primaries. He's appointed a special prosecutor in a case on which he's drawn criticism. We'll talk about that and his plans to address the city's latest deluge of hate demonstrations.
After that, food policy analyst Corby Kummer reflects on the passing of Fred Franzia, inventor of the longtime staple of broke college students everywhere. That would be $2 Chuck. Then GBH's Own Jared Bowen sums up the latest in arts and culture around Boston. Plus, on Broadway, where the Phantom of the Opera is closing. Then CNN's John King will join us. All that to come. Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Wall Street's watching for the Federal Reserve's response to the latest disappointing inflation data for the U.S. NPR's David Gura reports the Fed's holding a two-day meeting.
Wall Street economists expect the Federal Reserve will raise interest rates once again by 0.75 of a percentage point as the central bank tries to get inflation under control. The latest data showed prices rose faster than expected. According to the Consumer Price Index in August, they were up 8.3% from a year earlier. In an interview with 60 Minutes, President Biden said the economy won't get worse before it gets better. But the CPI data renewed fear the Fed won't be able to bring inflation down without causing a recession. David Gura, NPR News, New York.
2 days after Hurricane Fiona moved across the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico, most of the island's 3 million residents are still without electricity. Hundreds of thousands also lack running water because of failures in the island's water filtration and pumping systems. NPR's Adrian Florido reports from San Juan officials have not said how long restoring basic services will take.
The island's governor said he hopes most residents will have power and clean running water within days, but he made no promises. And across Puerto Rico, many people were bracing for the possibility they could be waiting for weeks. Officials said restoring utilities will take longest along the southern coast, which bore most of the damage from the storm. After slamming the Dominican Republic, Fiona is now moving toward the Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas, but its outer bands will continue dumping rain on Puerto Rico, meaning continued risk of flooding, mudslides, and other hazards. Adrian Florido, NPR News, San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Hurricane Fiona strengthened to a Category 3 storm. Senate Democrats say they stand ready to approve federal funding to help Puerto Rico in the aftermath of Fiona. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports the island took a direct hit again, and the vast majority of homes on the island are without running water and electricity.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says he's been in direct contact with FEMA to unlock not just federal response money, but funding to help the island rebuild. Schumer says he's also meeting with members of the Hispanic Federation to talk about additional steps to strengthen Puerto Rico's infrastructure. The U.S. territory is still struggling to modernize its outdated electric grid, which was decimated by Hurricane Maria 5 years ago.
NPR's Windsor Johnston reporting. Our member station WBEZ is telling us that at least 6 people have been transported to hospitals following an explosion at an apartment building on Chicago's west side this morning. According to tweets from the Chicago Fire Department, the explosion occurred in the South Austin neighborhood. Fire crews have evacuated the 4-story red brick building. Utility services to the building and an adjacent structure have been shut off. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in Brookline. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu says some street changes made during the month-long Orange Line shutdown will be made permanent. The changes were initially made to accommodate the influx of shuttle buses and blue bikes. Wu says the positives of making the changes permanent outweigh the negatives, and they include a new Silver Line Chinatown stop, some bus lanes in Copley Square, loading and drop-off zones in the South End, and pavement markings and signage in Jamaica Plain, among others. A feminist bookstore in Provincetown will stay open after raising enough money to buy its building. Owner Michelle Axelson did not have the cash to buy the building when it went up for sale in July, so she started a GoFundMe page.
I kept saying, if we let this go, we're losing such an opportunity. I know there is a way, particularly in the queer community, where people show up as family members and help each other, and people who have more share more.
Some 1,300 people raised nearly $214,000 in about 2 weeks, and angel investors loaned Axelson and her girlfriend another $800,000 so they could buy the whole building. The sale was finalized this month. Axelson has owned Women Crafts, a very popular store in the Provincetown since 2015, but the business has been around since 1976. Red Sox in Cincinnati tonight for the start of a series with the Reds. It's an early bird special. First pitch is at 6:40. 66 degrees in Boston, cloudy sky. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with its Name Your Price tool, a way to see coverage options based on a driver's budget. Learn more at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
It's Friday. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Libraries. We do every Tuesday, usually every Friday, but not this week. We're on Thursday this week because of a conflict, and we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
Excellent, Marjorie.
Thank you,
Hello
Jim.
again. We're joined now by Suffolk County District Attorney Kevin Hayden. After his primary win against Boston City Councilor Ricardo Arroyo, he is unopposed. There's no Republican in the general election, so he will be the next DA as well. Congratulations and good to see you, DA.
Thank you, Jim. Good to see you. Thank you, Marjorie.
Oh, thank you very much for being here, District Attorney. So let's start. You know, it wasn't a big crowd. It was 10 people, the anti-trans protests that were up at Boston Children's Hospital, and there were 200 apparently, according to Boston.com counter-protesters there. So it was a small contingent. But nonetheless, this seems to be happening more and more. They're upset about the program at Children's Hospital that helps transgender kids. Mm-hmm. So what's your role in all this? What do you do when you're the DA for things like this, which may be continuing?
Well, hopefully we have no role. So if they engage in a peaceful and appropriate protest and exercise their rights to free speech in an appropriate manner, then there's really nothing for us to do. But that having been said, you know, we continue, and that's why we started our civil rights unit. We continue to have a concern about protests and about whether or not they can cross the line, and when they do, how we handle that. And we've had that happen, and we've had that happen leading to arrests, leading to civil rights violations, whether it involves groups or whether it involves just one individual engaged in some sort of hate-related crime or speech. And so that's our concern. That's why we started the Civil Rights Unit.
This is something fairly new. I mean, I remember years ago there used to be anti-abortion protests that were very outside of clinics, Planned Parenthood and stuff like that. But this is something new, I think, isn't it?
I think it is, yeah. Why, I don't know. Maybe it's just the change in the national rhetoric and the willingness to engage in that rhetoric, and the extent that that's changed. Maybe it has something to do with sort of coming out of COVID and people still trying to figure out how to interact with each other, and maybe it's a little bit of both. I don't know, but certainly seems different to me.
Well, I would add a third factor. I mean, Trump has legitimized hate in this society, and a lot of these people are acting out on the kind of behavior that a former president seems to condone. Can you explain one thing to me? And we've asked a ton of DAs about this. The Rachel Rollins, your predecessor, is now the U.S. Attorney, charged this Westfield woman for making a bomb hoax kind of thing around this children's thing. How is it decided? I understand if the law that applies is only federal or only state. Obviously, that's who the prosecutor would be. Do prosecutors talk to each other to decide in a case like that who takes the lead? How is that her case and not yours?
So in that case, we didn't have a conversation, and in some cases we have a conversation, in some cases we don't. If there's a question of who should handle the case, then we'll have that conversation if we're both considering it. A multiplicity of factors will come into play. Who's better able to handle the case? What are the charges and sentences involved in the case? But in that case, we didn't have it.
Does it bother you when you don't get a call, even if it's purely to give you a heads up that I'm proceeding in this matter that probably concerns you because it is in your physical jurisdiction?
Not at all. If it does bother me, then I'll pick up the phone and have that conversation with whoever the individual is.
You know, there was a story in the Globe the other day about you firing the head of your juvenile unit, and the concern that some people voiced was that it represented a diminished commitment to diversion programs for young people. Your spokesperson, Jim Borghesani, said absolutely that is not the case. But one of the things he wouldn't speak to, I don't think you do, is why. If it doesn't represent a diminution in commitment, and you'll confirm for us whether it does or doesn't, I assume you'll say it doesn't, why was this guy fired? He's been there 11 years.
Sure. So it certainly doesn't. On the entire campaign trail, I've actually applauded and continued to make it clear that we'll continue in our juvenile alternative resolution program. We are fully committed to it. When I hear individuals or organizations question my commitment in that regard, or Rob's commitment in that regard, I recoil a little bit. I've committed my entire career to children and to protecting children in various capacities. I was a criminal defense attorney representing juveniles and a prosecutor handling juvenile cases. There is nothing more important to me. And so for me, that's a real commitment. Separate and apart from that, it's a program. It's a program made of social workers, made of a bunch of prosecutors, working together with service agencies, working together with the court, working together with the defense bar. And that program is built to stand the test of time. It's built to stand personnel changes, and it will withstand personnel changes. So one person does not this program make, and that's for sure. And even if it did, that one person would be me, and my commitment to it remains
Why'd you fire the guy, though?
steadfast. Well, I really can't discuss personnel matters in any situation. There are reasons, and we have them, but those aren't reasons that we could discuss.
Tell us something, though. How does the juvenile unit work? What does that mean? That some kid, 16 years old, assault and battery or attempted guns, whatever, and is in the district attorney's jurisdiction? What does the juvenile unit do about that kid?
So under the Juvenile Alternative Resolution Program, we are looking to divert cases whenever possible. We are concerned about a school-to-prison pipeline. We're concerned about a juvenile-to-prison pipeline. We're concerned about our young people getting indoctrinated into our criminal legal system at a young age. And so we always make every effort to divert charges that come before the juvenile court whenever possible, and make an effort to do that prior to arraignment. We have social service providers, we have social workers in our office that are working comprehensively with groups in the community, and we're providing real alternatives to prosecutions for our juveniles. The success rate for that is it's about 80% for people that actually complete the resolution program, and the success after that in terms of not being offending is very similar. It's about 75%. So we love those numbers. Who wouldn't? Those are good stats. That's why we stand behind it. That's why we'll continue to engage in it, because it's so important.
And what do you see are the issues that when these, I mean, obviously it's a generalization, but is it poverty issues? Is it that kids are nervous about getting recruited by a gang? Is it walking to school? I mean, what kind of stuff do you see that maybe has a kid that's going to be a good kid get caught up in something bad?
Well, I've got a lot of experience in this area. It's everything. There is certainly gang influence. Obviously, when we talk about young girls and human trafficking, there's a cross-pollination there when it comes to that issue. Poverty certainly comes into play. Family environments can influence as well. And sometimes the children just make mistakes, right? And there's also the issue that we all know well too well, based on the recent science that revolves around brain development and the decisions that young people make that's not really fully developed within their brain until they're somewhat 21, 25 years of age. So there's a multiplicity of factors.
Kevin, hey, one more thing about this. I mentioned the Globe story. Half of the advocates said, this doesn't represent in any way a diminution in commitment, as you're saying. Half said it worried them that it did. I don't know you well enough yet to know what your modus operandi is. You said, for example, with the U.S. attorney, if you had a concern, you just pick up a phone and call her. When you read a Globe story like that, and you see that a couple important people in the community who do really important work are nervous about a decision you just made, like firing this guy, do you call them on the phone, or do you say, let's have a meeting so I can tell you what I'm doing to reassure you? How do you operate?
So we're making some of those calls, and I would encourage those people, if they haven't heard from me, to pick up the phone and call me. I'd welcome a conversation about it.
Okay, we're talking to Kevin Hayden. He's the Suffolk County DA.
So I know this is not in your jurisdiction in Suffolk County, but I'm just wondering what you think about what happened in Martha's Vineyard when the 50 migrants from Venezuela, I think a lot of them have gone through 7 countries, crossed the Rio Grande, endured terrible things, seeing someone drown next to them, seeing someone die from exhaustion, wind up in Texas, get put on an airplane thinking they're going to Boston and going to get jobs and housing. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that?
Yeah, certainly not in my jurisdiction, but something that matters to me a lot, and does influence my jurisdiction depending on what happened in court. with ICE and deportation having an impact on what's going on in our court system. We don't want that having a chilling effect there, obviously. But I think we as a society have to be really concerned and sensitive and compassionate around these issues, because at the end of the day, these are people. These are people who want a better life, who didn't necessarily ask for whatever situation they're in. We certainly don't want them used as political pawns, which, from a very general perspective, when I look at what happened there, that may be what happened. I think that's unfortunate. Whether it's my job or whether it's the issue that you just talked about, we have to always remember the human and the personal factor involved. Remember that everyone has a family, everyone has a mother who loves them, everyone maybe have a mother who swears that her son or daughter can sing, that sort of thing. And so we can never forget the human aspect of any of these things, whether it's the criminal legal system or whether it's these immigration type issues.
There's been a big debate, staying on this just for a second, and repeating, obviously it's not in your jurisdiction, and you're a county prosecutor. I have to say, this angst that legal experts who are honest are going through about whether or not DeSantis and his people committed a crime, to me, it's almost a slam dunk. If I went over to that woman over there and said, by the way, excuse me, I have a place, if you agree to go with me and get on this bus, when you get to the other end of the bus, you're going to get cash assistance for 8 months, you're going to get free housing, you're going to get legal assistance and whatever, a whole bunch of other things. She says, based upon that representation, those representations, I'm going to go to that place. She gets to the place based upon my defrauding her, and none of those things exist. Have I not committed a crime, whatever the statutory language is? When someone does something to their detriment based upon false representations of another, they've got criminal problems, don't they?
They very well might, and not making light of this by any stretch of the imagination, but I think, harkening back to our earlier questions, that's probably a decision that my counterpart in the U.S. Attorney's Office gets to make.
I totally understand that. I just, as a general proposition, it seems to me what I described to you in the abstract, I understand, in the abstract, is more than likely criminal behavior. Yes?
Or at least extremely atrocious, no matter whether or not it's criminal or not.
Okay, fair enough. You had decided the other day, you and I had this discussion, a lot of people have had discussions with you. During the campaign, while Ricardo Arroyo had real serious problems with Globe reporting, there were reports about you and a transit cop who pulled a weapon on a driver, white cop, I believe a black Hispanic, correct me if I'm wrong on any of these facts, DA, driver, then the cop called a fellow cop to come up with some alibi for him. To make a long story short, the contention in the Globe was, at least from the lawyer for the cop, that one of your assistant DAs, one of your chief assistants, said, we have no interest in prosecuting this thing. Without boring people with all the details, you denied that that was what was said, or at least that was what the intention was. You were asked, I believe, early on, I may have even asked you if you'd appoint a special prosecutor here. I believe your answer was no, and no, and no, and then you did. What changed? Why'd you do it?
Yeah, well, what changed was late in the midnight hour of the election, there was an official MBTA tweet that came out from the MBTA Police Department that was inappropriate at the very least. At that point, we made the decision that it would only be prudent to appoint a special prosecutor.
What did it say? It was in the Globe. I just don't remember. What did it say?
It's in the Globe. I don't want to rehash it. It says a lot of things about me and our office and about how we handled the case and how that impacted the election was stolen, etc. But I'd rather not get into the specifics of what it said because I don't remember them verbatim. But it was at that very point that we knew, and that next day that we decided that it would only be prudent for us to get a special prosecutor involved at that point.
And could you explain to people what that means when you appoint a special prosecutor to look into something? What is his, and Glenn Cunha, who used to be the state inspector general, right? Yeah,
that's correct.
What does that mean? You're totally backed out of it, and he is free to, well, tell us what it means.
We're totally backed out of it. He is in charge of the investigation, and he is, based upon the authority that's endued upon him, free to proceed with that case however he sees fit, and that's what he's doing.
But just so I understand, I'm sorry to belabor this, so I'm clear. You have the case before a grand jury, is that not correct? Do you not?
we were taking the case to the grand jury.
So is that all on pause, and now it's all in Cunha's hands? Or?
It's all in Glenn Cunha's hands at this point.
I don't mean to ruin your day, District Attorney, but our staff has found the quote, the tweet that you mentioned. It was calling you inept and lacks the integrity to serve as DA. That was the tweet you were talking about. That was in the Boston Globe. I can see why you didn't like that. Okay.
We're talking.
But, speaking of not liking that.
I got thick skin, though. We're going to continue to do
Well,
that.
stay on that for a second. Do you worry, though, just for a second? I mean, I think you did the responsible thing, actually, not that it matters. But you did it in response to a tweet attacking. Do you worry that that's a message to people, that you go after the DA and you get what you want, even if it's not his original game plan?
Not at all. I think we did the appropriate thing all along. The case always remained open. We always intended to pursue it, and we were fully prepared to ensue it. But there are logical stopping points where different decisions have to be made, and I think in this case that was the point where we needed to change direction.
I'm sorry I interrupted you, Margaret.
That's okay. We're talking to Suffolk County District Attorney Kevin Hayden. Speaking of the election, people probably know there were a lot of charges involving Arroyo, who was running against you, about a sexual harassment case that went on when he was in high school. We had Mayor Wu in here, and we were kind of surprised because Jim asked her who she voted for, and she said she voted for Arroyo even after all of this.
We actually have sound of that. Why don't we play that?
Yeah, why don't we play the
Mayor
sound.
Wu with us last week. Who'd you vote for?
I voted for Ricardo.
Early or on election day?
On election day.
Why?
This race has been, I think, so demoralizing for our residents. I think the voters have spoken, and ultimately this race ended up focusing, by the end, less about policy positions and the future steps and actions of this office, which is unfortunate.
So how are things with you and the mayor? I mean, you guys need to work together to a certain degree. Have you talked to her about this, or?
We have, and
Yeah.
I have no doubt that we'll be able to work together. I think that we are both keenly aware of the importance of putting any personal feelings or viewpoints aside in order to do what's best for Suffolk County, best for Boston, best for all of our citizens. We've had that conversation. I'm positive that we'll continue to have that conversation and others and get down into various details at points in time. So I don't have any concerns whatsoever.
Well, Jim has asked this question. Other reporters have asked this question, so why not me as well? There is a big cloud over this whole thing, the Arroyo side, this investigation about the transit police officer on your side. So I'll ask it again. What do you do? That's an extra burden you have coming into this office, isn't it?
Sure, and I can't dwell on the past. I can't worry about things I don't have any control over. I can only worry about what's next. What's next is us doing the job in the district attorney's office to the best of our ability. And we're excited about the chance to do that. We're excited to continue in focusing on gun prosecutions. We want to expand our services over sentences program. And we're most excited about engaging in community engagement. That doesn't sound quite right, but engaging in community engagement like never before, and advancing intervention and prevention strategies in close collaboration with all of our community partners like never before. And I think when we do that, then people will know, who I am, who our administration is, and what our office is all about, and it will make a difference.
You mentioned before having a lot of experience with kids. Either they make a mistake or their family's got problems, whatever it is, and that this resolution, this juvenile work with these kids to try to close that prison pipeline, school to prison, whatever it is, to prison pipeline. Without mentioning any names or giving away any details necessarily, unless there's somebody that made their story public, you got a good story for us, or somebody that did come through that program and was one of the 80% that made it to resolution and went on to turn their life around, as we like to say.
I do, and I will not mention this person's name, but he's someone that I know to this day, and is as fine a young man as you'd ever want to meet. And in the past, he'd been involved in trouble, and he'd also been involved as a victim. And he contacted me actually during the campaign, and reiterated to me and shared with me how much I changed his life, and how he wouldn't be where he is right now without me, and without me believing in him And that was in the prosecutor's office at the time. So
Was he in the gang?
No, he was not in the gang.
Okay.
No.
Because that's hard for kids that don't necessarily want to be in a gang, and because of neighborhood situations, they wind up getting in a gang.
It is, and I have no condemnation for anybody. I don't have a heaven or hell to send anybody to. I'm placed in the humble position of sometimes having to condemn actions, but it's always important to me to always remember that that's what I have to do. I can't condemn people. Like I said earlier, everyone has a mother and a father. Everyone has a mother who loves them and swears to God that he or she can sing. And so, if you've ever seen me interact with a young gang or allegedly gang-involved individual, that's something that I do. I think I do well and freely because I understand that people are people.
Can you sing, District Attorney? Can you sing? Did your mother say you could sing?
Those are two separate topics.
My mother never told me I could sing. I could sing a little bit.
Okay.
And no, I'm not going to sing today.
Okay.
By the way, it's good you made the decision you did because you can leave it to radio talk show hosts to condemn people. That's what we do. Hey, before you go, because there was so much crap back and forth and we discussed this today, and I'm sure you say to yourself when you go home, when is this going to end? When can I focus on the future? Spend the last couple of minutes on the future. Now you don't have an opponent, so technically you're not formally elected until obviously November 8th happens, but you will be. What are the top 2 or 3 things on Kevin Hayden's agenda starting in early 2020, or starting now in early 2023 for those people who couldn't get into the policy aspects of the campaign?
Sure. Things I mentioned a little bit earlier. Services over sentences is something that we want to expand. I've already had some key conversations with the legislators, and we'll be talking with financiers as well as how we can bring that forward, engage in it more. Guns and the guns that are on our streets will continue to be a focus. But what we're most excited about, again, is that community engagement piece. We have committed to a community engagement team, not just one community person, engagement person in the office that holds a title and it looks good. We're going to have a whole team of people. And met with people at Rosie's Place and several other organizations over the course of time. And one of the next people we'll probably bring in is someone that's focused on women's issues specifically. I have two men that are on the unit right now that have an expertise in reentry, and that's a strategic decision that we made as well. So we want to make sure, just like we want to make sure throughout our entire office, we want that group to be representative of our community. We want it to look like our community. We're committed to that. And that's something I'm committed to in terms of the entire office as well. I know it's going to take a lot of hard work and effort. It's going to start from the top down. And we'll start with our executive staff and making that as diverse as we can.
Kevin Hayden, we really appreciate your time as always. Thanks so much for being here.
All right,
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
That
Good
was
to see
Suffolk
you.
District Attorney Kevin Hayden. We very much appreciate his time coming up. An executive of the meat alternative company Beyond Meat apparently had to get his protein fix from somewhere. Well, he's been arrested for biting another man's nose. Our food policy writer, Corby Cummer, joins us to discuss that and more. He's next on 89.7 GBH, Boston Public.
Coercion, false promises, and a free bus ticket. In 1962, these were the incentives that lured dozens of black families from the Deep South to Hyannis.
The reverse freedom rides. 3 years ago, GBH News uncovered this forgotten piece of history. And just last week,
the arrival of nearly 50 migrants on Martha's Vineyard appears to be part of a larger Republican-led campaign to relocate migrants from border states.
We're following the story here on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and Massachusetts Maritime Academy, the Commonwealth's leadership university. They offer a hands-on learning environment, helping to prepare their students to be global leaders in careers on land or at sea. Maritime.edu. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browning, Marge Regan, live at the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Fred Franzia, if that's how you pronounce his name, legend in cheap winemaking, has died. His wine label, Trader Joe's Charles Shaw, made wine more accessible to Americans for its shockingly low sticker price, giving it its affectionate title, $2 Chuck. We'll get your texts and calls about $2 Chuck at the end of the show. But for now, we're joined on Zoom by food policy analyst Corby Kummer to talk about it. He's the executive director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, a senior editor at the Atlantic, and a senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Good afternoon, Corby.
Good afternoon, Jim and Marjorie.
Hey there.
So, Corby Kummer, a lot of us have very fond memories of $2 Chuck. In fact, we might have $2 Chuck, even though I think it's close to $4 now.
It is.
In our refrigerator because it's cheap wine. But tell us about the hero to many cheap wine drinkers, Fred Franzia, and his $2 Chuck.
So this was somebody who knew a good deal when he saw it. He was in Napa. He'd been doing kind of wholesale wine, and then he decided, I'm going to buy a winery and sell off its unsold wine for cheap. And that's what he did. And it was like remnant sales. And he created an enormous market by buying off the unused, unsold. There was a famous winery called Charles Shaw. He bought the whole thing. And in 2002, he started selling exclusively to Trader Joe's, and they called it $2 Chuck. It was $1.99 a bottle. So, and they say they've now sold 1 billion bottles. Wine snobs hate this idea. The idea that you can buy cheap wine. And he was in Napa, and he said, very delicately, take that and shove it, Napa. He told the New Yorker in 2009, I can sell off unsold wine and people can drink it. And that's what I think the key is. People can drink it. And if it's a way of buying wine that's decent for $2 at Trader Joe's or however much it now costs at Trader Joe's, you might have a refrigerator full of it, Marjorie, so you can update it. Why not? It's a way of ushering people into thinking wine's a decent thing to drink for dinner, and I can afford it.
Well, they point out in this story that in other countries, it is a lot easier to get affordable, accessible wine. Europe. Why is that? Why is it easier there than here?
First of all, there are many more wineries per capita. It's a shorter distribution chain. There's much more tradition of local wineries in France and Italy and Spain, the main European wine-producing countries. And when you go to Chile, for example, the enormous amounts of wine. And they have always produced a very wide range of affordable wine as well as expensive. And we think because it's imported, because it's French, because it's Italian, it has to be expensive. It doesn't have to be expensive. Whatever California wine snobs say, if you like wine and you want to keep experimenting it, you'll read wine books. You'll go and you'll start spending $6, $19 on it. The price is not an infallible indicator of quality.
By the way, we should say, rather than just celebrate this guy, we're going to talk about him later, he also got into some legal trouble for misrepresenting where the wine was from, what the wine was. Having said that, we shouldn't say bad things about Mr. Franzia on his way out the door.
He's a liar and a huckster.
Well, okay, fine.
But he popularized wine.
He did.
I have one more question, though. There was this wine I was talking to you about before the show, the 90 plus, where they kind of it was kind of a similar idea where they just use the leftovers from.
That's not $2 or $4.
No, it's not $2, but it's not $25. I think it's usually about $12 or $14, isn't it? And they're all different wines. They'll have a Pinot Grigio, whatever it is.
So what's our question?
Well,
here?
the question is, what's the difference between that and $2 Chuck? It's a lot more expensive. Isn't that the same idea?
My recommendation, after you have $2 Chuck at Trader Joe's, go to a local wonderful wine shop, like the wine shop at Formaggio Kitchen or Violette Wine Cellars. And I'm leaving out lots of wonderful local run wine shops. I know one in Jamaica Plain is a very famous one in Wellesley. They're giving tastings all the time. They are very happy to educate you. That's what got them into the business. They love that. You'll be able to find out for no money at all, and you'll decide for yourself, do I want to spend more money on a bottle of wine?
Urban Grape is right around the corner.
Oh, I love that.
To the list.
They have a clever idea, too.
Yeah, they do.
They go light wines.
Yeah, it's not varietal,
wine.
but it's the sort of It's as they compare it. It's sort of like number one with them is like skim milk, and
Yes.
whole milk or cream would be 10.
Yes.
It's brilliant.
It's
Hey, Corby, apparently a number of people in Italy are concerned about energy consumption. And boiling pasta, which they eat to the tune of a pound a week, which I think I eat a pound a week. But in any
Sure
case,
you do.
that's apparently the highest in the world. There's some food guy or scientist who has an idea about how to save energy while cooking pasta that I have to say I find totally ridiculous. So why don't you describe it, and if you support it, I will direct my ridicule to you. Go ahead.
Well, I don't support it. Having spent 2.5, maybe 3 years of my life doing nothing but researching pasta for my first cover story in the Atlantic
I didn't know
500
that.
years ago, which was really fun to do. This was not a discovery I had made. So I went looking today. Okay, let's talk about the Nobel Prize winning physicist who said, bring a small pot of water to boil or use an electric kettle. So many cooks these days will often boil water for pasta or anything else. You're starting a soup. They'll boil in an electric kettle because it's faster and it uses energy, they say.
Yeah.
It's definitely faster.
I love them.
Works easier. So electric kettle, dump it into a pot, and then, says this physicist, put the pasta in and leave it. Stir it once and leave it like steaming rice. Off the heat. I don't believe that it works. I haven't tried it. So I went online, and luckily Serious Eats and the great J. Kenji Lopez Alt, author of The Food Lab, long a Cambridge guy, fantastic scientist and cook. He had a full piece last year, 2021, about not needing gallons of water, not needing to keep it at a rolling boil. So the most I could endorse, because I can hide behind Kenji Lopez Holt, whom I trust completely, is a small pot, just enough water to cover, a low simmer for not that very long. So you don't need a rolling boil, and you don't need a huge amount of water to keep it going. So he says, pasta la vista to your old ideas.
Oh, I love that idea. Well, let me just tell you why I have a problem. By the way, I cook eggs exactly the way, hard-boiled eggs, exactly the way this Nobelist is suggesting. You essentially boil the water with the eggs in it, and as soon as it reaches a boil, you turn it off, cover it, take it off the heat. Works perfectly. The thing that I don't get here, though, is when I make pasta, I assume when anybody makes pasta, one of the reasons you stir it is so that it doesn't stick together in a big clump. If you cover it and take it off the heat and leave it, how do you not get essentially one huge strand glommed together with all the others? What's the answer to that?
Well, so Kenji, who calls that section a sticky situation, says you have to keep stirring it at the beginning, and that it is at the beginning when the pasta releases most of its starch and it's in the highest danger of clumping. But if you stir it as it keeps cooking, it begins gelatinizing, forming, it doesn't stick to each other, it goes off in the water more, and you'll be fine after the first 2 or 3 minutes.
I think this is all BS. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to play a little sound for you and then ask you a question. Could we please play some sound from KFSM TV? It's a CBS station in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Here it is.
Punching through the driver's windshield for hitting him and biting his nose.
Okay, here's the question for you, Corby Comer. If you punch through well, it's fine to punch through the windshield, but in addition to be punching through the windshield, and it's also fine to hit somebody it's not fine, but no, as relates to my question.
Oh, okay.
And punching someone, it's a road rage incident.
Road rage.
If you bite someone's nose, and you don't only bite it, but you bite the tip off, which this guy did, can you qualify as a vegetarian or a vegan? That's a very direct question. What's the answer to the question, yes or no?
It depends on whether you ingest it and you actually want to taste it.
Now, do you have any idea who this news account in Fort Smith, Arkansas is describing?
It might be a former Tyson meat employee who is now the chief operating officer of a large plant-based meat company.
Ding, 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 ding. So do you know this character?
I don't know this character. I know that Beyond Meat that Tyson was for a while an investor in Beyond Meat. Tyson has unparalleled supply chain and distribution expertise. Beyond Meat wants to be a substitute for meat in everybody's freezer, and so it would make sense to hire somebody from Tyson.
By the way, talk about coincidence. I Googled this guy who's the CEO of Beyond Meat, even though he eats nose. Do you know what his wife's name is? Clarice. Is that unbelievable? You get that, or do I have to explain that to you?
I don't get it.
Okay,
Oh,
fine.
that's from
Thank you.
the cannibalism.
Silence of the Lambs.
Silence
Thank
of the Lambs.
you.
The
When you ought to
cannibalism.
explain it, it really doesn't.
Clarice was the FBI agent.
my
But you do think to
Never
yourself,
had that connotation.
Jamie, did you get it? Jamie got it.
he
Thank
probably has some anger management issues, I would say, especially when he smashed through the windshield
With his fist.
of a Subaru. I mean, mild-mannered people generally drive Subarus,
yeah,
don't they?
it's
It's
a
not
good
somebody
point.
like in a Corvette or
Actually,
a
excellent
big one
point,
of those
Marjorie.
big pickup trucks. That he's picking on a very mild-mannered person, it would seem to me, who nonetheless got out of the car. And he just said he kind of touched the rear wheel with the front of his car. I mean, maybe Beyond Meat, we should rethink this. I don't know, Corby.
Oh, you're a fan of Beyond Meat, aren't you?
I'm a huge fan of Beyond Meat, and what I was trying to think, how do you screen out for anger management and rage? Obviously, if this guy had shown this within the halls of Beyond Meat, he would have been out on his ear or his nose, but now it's been revealed to the entire world.
Well, actually, the one indicator, Marjorie told me this morning, she did some research. When he was hired as CEO, which I think was just December of last year, he suggested changing the name of the company from Beyond Meat to Beyond Nose, which I thought, thank you very much. I'll be in the lounge on Thursdays, try the veal.
Okay, so Corby Kummer, our food man, let's talk about the problem apparently lots of people are having when they take a picture of a wonderful meal and they put it on Instagram. And then they're demanded to supply the recipe for said meal. I did not know that this was a problem apparently sweeping the hinterlands of America, this desire for the recipes, for the food in the image. What can be done?
I don't know that anything particularly has to be done except to advocate better manners on Instagram. And this is a writer, Tayal Rao, whom I love, and is a really great writer in the Times, but it was kind of looking around for a column topic. This was the topic. The idea is that if the recipe guy who replies to a picture of beautiful food that somebody makes and posts on social media with recipe, ? Like, you haven't given me what I want and need. It is your obligation, if you were going to post something beautiful, to tell me exactly how to make it. Developing recipes and writing recipes costs a lot of money and time. It's not everybody's obligation to give you the recipe. So it's sort of a larger point. Should people be posting beautiful food they made if they're not telling you how to make it? I'll say when our wonderful Cheryl Julian locally posts gorgeously composed pictures of baked goods, I can't stand the idea that she's not giving me any of it and I can't eat some right out of my phone. So I think that's unfair. But asking her to post a recipe, she's a professional, she'll give it later. But it's too much to ask is the point of the column in the New York Times.
Well, they have, did you see the quote from Lucia Lee? She says, middle school teacher in Brookline, we want to get in the dreaded local angle, Jim.
Yeah.
And apparently she posts a lot of photos to Instagram, and they're beautiful, they're well lit, and she just started her account to archive her home cooking and the romantic possibilities of her favorite foods. And she says she is often under pressure in comments and direct messages she gets to give more details and more structured recipes. Yeah, and she says posting is a creative outlet for her. And she says if people are polite, she might, a please and thank you go a long way. She might respond, but it isn't my job to pump out recipes for you. So things are out of control. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs. It's dog eat dog in the food world, Corby.
But it's also, when you post to social media, you're opening yourself up to all kinds of comments and requests and vituperation. So this is what people who post beautiful pictures of food do. But mostly it's actually people posting food in restaurants.
Yeah, it is.
Go spend money at this restaurant. It's a great local restaurant. I'm all for it.
By the way, texter, we try to respond to our texters. The texter asks, and you're the guy to ask, what wine do you pair with nose? Do you know? What is your preferred wine with nose, Corby?
Probably we should ask Bill Buford because he wrote a whole book about meat, and it's always from nose to tail.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're really going to beat this baby till it begs for mercy,
I am not done.
Jim.
The show's not over till 2.
There's no question about that.
Continue.
Okay, so you have to love Barbara Lynch. She's a local restaurateur, and not many people, when they're being interviewed by the Boston Globe for a story in the newspaper, talk about how they've gone to some kind of person that knows a lot about psychedelic mushrooms wants to ingest psychedelic mushrooms mixed with chocolates and hot water. But she says she goes, tells this person what's troubling her, and he tells you exactly how to eat the psychedelic mushrooms, and her mind-expanding hallucinogens come, in this case, with a recipe, Corby Cummer. She's a hot ticket, isn't she, Barbara Lynch?
Barbara Lynch this is a very long profile by Deborah First about a new restaurant in Gloucester that Barbara Lynch is opening on the site of a restaurant that evidently since the late 50s has been run and owned by women, which is just Barbara Lynch's kind of thing to do, to celebrate the heritage of successful buccaneer women. So, for example, Lydia Shire is a predecessor of really a woman buccaneer chef and restaurateur, and the two she and Barbara Lynch might be offering online cooking classes. But it's a very long profile. Barbara Lynch is always expanding in ways you just don't expect her to. Like, she's an artist, and the typography and graphic design of B&G Oysters and the Butcher Shop, everything she does with unexpected style in one way or another. So in this case, it's mushrooms. I don't think she's actually going to serve these in the Gloucester, but if you're going to get on the road to Annisquam and Gloucester, because you're expecting mushrooms in your first course at it's going to be a fish restaurant, then maybe it'll get you through the door.
We asked her about it when she was here in June with us on the radio, and asked about her new restaurant and what she's doing in Gloucester. Here's part of what she said.
With this new move, it's like, I'm not giving up on Boston, but I think we're going to connect bigger and better. And also have an opportunity to teach in Gloucester that it's not just fish and clamming, and it is about innovation, it's about mapping, it's about knowing the waters. So I'm dying to go and dive in.
And it's called the Rudder, right? And isn't it called the Rudder? I think it is. And it isn't.
That's the predecessor restaurant.
What's the new one called? No one knows. Fine, we'll look it up. But let me just say, one thing that Deborah First says that we've experienced, and this is not a criticism, it's an observation. Barbara Lynch makes pretty common usage of the F word.
Yes, she does.
Now, John back in Brighton, who runs our show, is our engineer. Have you ever had to bleep anybody more in the 24 years we've been working together, John? What's the answer to that question? No,
4 times.
Well, 400 times. What is he talking about? She is an F-bomb machine.
Well, did you read that she went to speech therapy
to try to drop
stop
it?
saying? I went to speech therapy so I could, speak better with my pronunciation problems. I was there for many weeks. I have improved. But anyway, I love that. I mean, she couldn't stop saying the F word.
But this is what I had to say about that clip. I was going to ask you, how did you get that long and unbroken sounding?
We edited it. That's how we did it.
Maybe it was right out of her speech therapy class.
By the way, on a serious note about her, unlike a lot of famous chefs in town who are classically trained, this is a South Boston kid who had a really tough life, and she wrote an autobiography.
It's terrific.
That is really terrific. It is really raw. It is really interesting and painful in times. I can't remember the title. Can you check it out and let us know? Jamie's eating, so his mouth is full. But when his mouth is no longer full...
A life of playing with fire.
Is that what it's called?
Thank you very much, Corby Cummer. We appreciate that very much.
And it is called The Rudder, her new restaurant.
It is called.
Okay.
Okay, now...
Imagine how gorgeous that's going to be up there, though, in Gloucester.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be great.
See, it's got a dock attached to it.
I
and all that sort of stuff.
I know.
Now, Corby, you may wonder why we are bringing up, before you go, the fact that Colette, which is a Parisian bakery, it's either in Melrose or Medford. It is expanding to the other M place.
Yeah, it's in Medford. It's expanding into Melrose.
Now, you might say, why are we talking about a Parisian bakery in Melrose or Medford on the show? Do you know what the answer to the question is?
The answer is, you've seen my bumper sticker, solely created for me. I break for bakeries.
No, that would be wrong. It's because it's our colleague Zoe's favorite bakery.
Yes.
So as a result, do you have anything to say about the expansion of Colette's, either into Melrose or into Medford or one of them?
I will add that my students at Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy are obsessed with this bakery, and they have refused my request to bring in Colette pastries to class because they wait in line too long and they're not going to bother to be generous to anybody else. So that's underselling them. They can't wait. They wait in line for it to open. And what I love about the story of Colette is it's a French couple. They came here, they had a French-trained chef that they brought, and now their 21-year-old and 23-year-old children are in the business with them and helping them expand to Melrose.
Well, let me tell you something. Zoe is getting very combative. She not only just wrote us a note, but she wrote it in capital letters. So, you know, she's serious. And she said their head baker is under 25. Why is that not a big deal? And it is a big deal, Zoe. So we'll mention it. Do you know their head baker is under 25?
All they say is Valentin, like Valentine without the N or the E, and that he's 21 and he joined last year. But let me just refresh your memory about the apprenticeship system in France, which starts at 14. It's like vocational school. And you work pretty much full-time in restaurants. I think you leave school at 17. And so he's obviously been apprenticing since a very early age. He came up through that system, and it works very well. Vocational school works very well.
You know, by the way,
Joanne Chang, a pastry chef, when she decided she wasn't going to pursue a career in math,
I don't know
in a restaurant before she went on to open flower bakeries. I thought she was.
Well, she liked her biology, I think, and it was after college, maybe school. I think maybe she got an MBA from Harvard. And then she went to Hayard, which was started by the Daniel Boulud's pastry chef.
There you go.
The grad school education in the same way, apprenticing herself to a great pastry chef.
By the way, Daniel Boulud, I'm sure the listeners know why he's so famous as a pastry chef. He'd always add a dash of nose. So whatever he was doing, do you remember that, Corby, or do you not?
No, his taste was so unerring, I would say it was always on the nose.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Goodness.
You were getting booed at the library.
You guys are just a riot
Thank you very much. Corby Comer, it's great to see you as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Corby. See you
Let's
soon.
keep that thing going.
Okay, we've been speaking with Corby Comer. He's the Executive Director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, a Senior Editor at The Atlantic, and a Senior Lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition and Policy. Coming up, GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen with a lot of great stories, some of them kind of sad about the arts, and some of them not so sad, actually.
That's a good point, Marjorie.
That's right.
So some are sad, some aren't sad.
You'll laugh,
you cry. Exactly.
Okay. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, and we are broadcasting live on youtube.com/GBH News.
American politics today seems more divided than ever. And while some see Civil War parallels, there's a more recent example, the 1960s.
I would say that the 60s contributed to the incredible divisions, cultural and political, that we now see in our contemporary society.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly, political lessons from the not-so-distant past, this afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Newbury Court, a full-service residential community in Concord, Massachusetts, for persons 62 or over, committed to creating an active, independent lifestyle. More at newburycourt.org or 978-369-5155. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com.
Trusted. Local news. This is 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan live from the Boston Public Library. We'll be back on Thursday this week, not Friday, Thursday at the library this week. YouTube.com/GBH News is where we're streaming. We're joined now at the library by Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen. Hello, Jared. How are you?
It's great to be with you both.
Well, great to see you as always, Jared. So you and I spoke with Anna Devere Smith when the Rodney King play was just about to start over the ART. It's still there, but I just want to play a little sound of her talking to us about her revival production, which this is, of something called Twilight, Los Angeles, 1992, which is still at the ART in Cambridge. Here she is.
woman of few words. We'll get back to her.
Here we are 30 years later, and what attracts our attention is a death in the case of George Floyd, in the case of Rodney King, a beating that we all saw on video. But then we also always look at how we are living in race and say, well, we have to change it. And the question is, do we?
So tell us about this production at the ART and how it impacts what you just said about changing ideas about race.
Well, she's a masterful storyteller, and basically she takes us back to, as you just said, Los Angeles in 1992. And in the wake of those riots, she went and, as a theater practitioner, not as a journalist, interviewed hundreds of people, more than 300 people, a whole cross-section of society after these riots happened, from people who witnessed it to people involved to officials to people like Charlton Heston, just to get every kind of viewpoint about how society was reacting to that moment and what happened in their community.
And you should explain Charlton Heston, because he, beyond being an actor, was president of the NRA.
Right, and he jokes about all his friends suddenly wanting to go to his house or have him arm them with guns because suddenly security was not something you could take for granted in Los Angeles. We remember what happened after that beating of Rodney King and then the acquittal and how the community just completely broke apart. But what she also does in this piece, which I found very interesting, is she takes us into the Korean community and how the shooting of a teenage black girl, Latasha Harlan, it really kind of set the fire for what was to come because of the way that unfolded. This was a woman, a Korean woman, who shot this young girl, believing that she was shoplifting when it appears that she really wasn't. And so what Anna Deavere Smith does is act as a journalist, but in theatrical form, to do all of these interviews, piece this story together, layer upon layer, and then present it on stage. Now, typically, Anna Deavere Smith will do it herself, playing all of these characters, and that's part of the amazing part of Anna Deavere Smith, is that she can do this, just shifting from one to the next. Here, in this revival at the ART, it's presented by 5 different actors who have the same skill that she has in inhabiting different characters in just the turn of a second to suddenly shift. But as she was just talking about in that clip you played, looking at this in the wake of in the wake of George Floyd, do you recognize how little changes? I think we've all been reminded of this, and to know that it was all laid out before us, and that 30 years later we're still having the same conversations, and we don't seem to have advanced very much as a society, is just heartbreaking.
Now, this is closing fairly soon. Can you still get into this?
This is the last weekend. You can still get into it, and you absolutely should, because it is such an interesting piece. It's masterful, as I say, in terms of the storytelling. The cast is excellent. There's every reason to see it, and of course, again, to be re-engaged with our society in this moment.
Again, it's at the ART. We're talking to Jared Bowen. Did you ever see The Phantom?
I did see Phantom of the Opera, yes.
On Broadway?
I think I saw it on Broadway, and I've certainly seen the touring production.
Neither of us have seen it. We talked about it before the show. Yeah,
It got some sound, though.
We do?
Yes, we do.
Well, play some sound.
Yeah, let's get us in the mood. Here's some sound from Phantom of the Opera, the song All I Ask of You.
I think that's why I didn't see it, actually.
That's
sorry. I take that back. It was very unkind. So this thing is shutting down, and it's not just the longest running Broadway show. It is by far the longest running Broadway show. Why is it shutting down?
Because of COVID.
Really?
So, well, there are myriad reasons. Everything is changing. We know this. So Phantom of the Opera has been on Broadway for, I think it's 35 years that they'll celebrate in February.
35 years?
35 years. Almost 14,000 performances that they'll have had at that point. You look around the world, and it's made billions of dollars, and the touring productions and the sit-down productions in London and other places. However, it's a very expensive show. It was produced, I was reading some interviews, and it was produced in the 1980s when money was very abundant and big theatrical extravaganzas were how you produced shows. So you have a big orchestra, you have lots of costumes and costume changes. They point out, look at Hamilton, it's a big show, but you don't have costume changes, so it winnows it down. A big cast. Obviously, a lot of theatrical pieces. If you've seen it, you see the chandelier come crashing down onto the stage, and that ends Act 1, if memory serves.
Yeah, how do they do that? Because they can't be breaking a
Very
chandelier
carefully.
every show.
No, so yeah, of course, it's all this amazing rigging, and it just sweeps overhead and sweeps down to the stage. And
It doesn't break, though, really, does it?
It kind of tilts, if memory serves. So these were all the things that made Phantom of the Opera a huge show, and of course, it was a tourist destination in New York. Everybody wanted to see it and see it in New York. But now coming out of COVID, with box office down 10 to 15%, tourists not going to New York in the way they were, and New Yorkers and people in the region, New Jersey, whatnot, going to see shows. They're not going to see Phantom because they saw that decades ago, so there's no need to see it again. So they just realized suddenly the model wasn't there to support the show anymore.
Do you have to wear a mask on Broadway?
No, they did away with the mask mandate in, I believe, July 1st. I happened to be there that day.
How about, I'm going to see the Tina Turner thing with my kid tomorrow night. Do you have to wear a mask in Boston anymore?
No.
You don't?
No.
But I bet lots of people do.
I hope a lot of people
Well,
do.
this is really changing, and it's interesting to follow this because I think the theaters are having a really hard time in this moment to figure out what to do because there isn't a lot of guidance about this. So when the pandemic first happened, you saw the theater community and really the arts community come together and decide unilaterally what they should do. Will they come together and uniformly ask for your vaccination card? Will they mandate masks? They did all of that together. But now they're kind of on their own. And so Broadway across America and or the Opera House, which is where the Tina Turner musical is playing, they're not requiring masks. Other smaller theaters have gone the way of not requiring masks for most performances, but requiring them for matinees. I saw one on Sunday, I had to wear a mask. And others...
Because they're kids or older people go to those?
I think it's because there are a lot more older people at matinees. Okay. And they told me they're getting really loud, angry phone calls on both sides from people saying, really, the hospital in your theater are the only places that I have to wear a mask? And other people saying, there's no way I'm coming back to a theater until everybody is masked. So they're really in a difficult position, and I feel for them, as I've talked about a lot. They were the first industry, one of the first industries to close and the last to open, and again, with no guidelines and really financially struggling. A lot of theaters did get federal support, not enough, they would argue. So you see the numbers are down, and this is not good.
Let's stay on Broadway for a few minutes. How much trouble is Broadway as a whole coming out of COVID? Are audiences returning, or what's the deal?
I think we're about to find out, because I think the form is trying to come back in a really big way. There are a huge number of shows opening this fall. And yet, I think I've mentioned the app that I use. If through my journalistic channels don't get tickets to a show, I'll use this app called Today Tix, which is the producers all get together, and that's how they make their tickets available. And I see shows, all of the big shows, Hugh Jackman and The Music Man, all of the big shows are on Today Tix now. There was a time you wouldn't see anything like that available because it was such a hard to get ticket. So I think it's an indication that they're struggling, and when you have more shows, and as I mentioned, we'll have a huge volume of shows this fall, it remains to be seen.
You know, one of the things that the New York Times did, I thought was quite interesting, I think Marjorie did too, is with the closing in February, I think it is, of Phantom of the Opera, they list what will be then the 4 longest standing shows. One of them has a local connection, because obviously Julie Taymor, who was behind Lion King, is from Newton, and it's been running forever. Isn't that the same kind of show, though, with tons of costume changes and huge cast and huge orchestra and that sort of thing?
It is, but I think that might be a little bit different, because I think Disney argues that's their best-selling title, or maybe the best-selling title in all of filmdom, all of entertainment. And of course, you have a generation after generation of kids coming up, and families want to take their kids, and Phantom of the Opera doesn't have that baked-in audience favor for it. But it could be the case that it changes. I mean, interesting, because Chicago is also one of the top musicals, but very simple set, very simple costumes. It doesn't take a lot to run that. show.
Well, you know what's funny to me that it survived this long, because I saw the Book of Mormon with my kids years ago, and it's it's basically trashing the Mormon church, in a very funny kind of way. I thought it'd be much more controversial, number one, but number two, that's lasted forever too.
About 11 years.
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm one of the few people, I was a big fan of South Park, or creators of South Park did Book of Mormon. I didn't love that show.
You didn't?
So it's kind of surprised me that it has staying power too.
Well, it does have staying power, but I think it's really hard, especially like when you're going to go see Tina Turner. I went and saw that Temptations thing, the biography.
Ain't Too Proud, yeah.
Yes, which was fantastic, because of course what they're doing is they're playing Temptations music all night long, and the dancing and the singing was fantastic. But that's the problem. Everybody's belting out the songs. It's almost like going to a rock concert where people you're smashed into, everybody's spitting and yelling and all that kind of stuff. And that's why I think it was nerve-wracking when people didn't have any masks on there. Of course, this was about, 8 or 10 months ago too, but I'm sure the same thing's going to be true with the Tina Turner concert, because people are going to be singing in the aisles, right?
Well, and I know the theaters have been very careful. A lot of them consulted the Chan School of Public Health to figure out what they should do with filtration and things of that nature. The casts get tested very regularly. I mean, these shows are so careful because they don't want to be losing anybody. But it'll be a big show. I did see Tina. I'll be there tomorrow night, by the way.
Oh, you are? Oh, great.
Yeah. I saw that show, and I happened to be in London when it was playing, and I saw that there, and it's a very exciting show. And of course, she's such a huge, great, fun personality.
Let's come back. Well, we are local because we're talking about the Tina thing. Is it called Fabulation? Is that the name? Tell us about this at the Lyric Stage.
Yeah, this is really an interesting show because we have what's the adage? You can't go home again. But this is a show that wonders, well, what if you're forced to go home? So Fabulation, playing at the Lyric Stage Company of Boston, is written by Lynn Nottage. The full title, by the way, is Fabulation, or The Re-Education of Undine. So she is a woman who's had a pretty great amount of success owning a PR boutique PR firm in New York, and she's corralling celebrities, and she's had quite a bit of success, and all of a sudden everything comes crashing down on her. Her husband absconds with her money. She finds out she's pregnant, and the FBI shows up.
Yeah.
So
bad day.
So she has to go home, and
she worked for Trump, or she didn't work?
Yeah, she didn't work for Trump.
Oh, okay.
But she has to go home to her family in Brooklyn, the family she hasn't seen in 14 years because she kind of didn't let it allow it to be corrected in a magazine that her family had perished in a fire because basically she was ashamed of how she was raised and her working class roots, and so Lynn Nottage really explores this. So in some ways it's wickedly funny, but it's also very personal because I think we all look at who we are today versus where and how we were raised, and you try to reconcile those two things, and then what happens when you're put right back into it. So she's with her parents who are security officers, and her brother struggling with PTSD from the war, and her grandmother who has an unfortunate drug habit that she doesn't want to talk about, especially if you're in PR. And so all of those things come to the fore, and it's really enjoyable, but as I say, very thought-provoking too.
So thinking of something that would never appear to be thought-provoking or something to make a play about, Heroes of the Fourth Turning, a play about a bunch of Catholic conservatives. I mean,
yeah, I wanted to talk to you about this, Marjorie.
I know.
I wanted to get your take on this. We should have gone together.
I'm going to go see this.
I'm dying to see this
because I'm not usually a fan of Catholic conservatives, because I think of those are the people that covered up the sex abuse scandal and want to be horrible to gay and lesbian and trans people and want to do horrible things with divorced and remarried Catholics, and I don't like them.
Well, all of those things bubble up with a lot of nuance in this play. So this is presented by Speakeasy Stage Company, and it's playing through October 8th. And Heroes of the Fourth Turning finds a group, mostly of 20-somethings, and one guy a little bit older, who are gathering at nighttime. They've all gone home to Wyoming to celebrate one of their mentors becoming president of a small conservative Catholic college in Wyoming. There's been a little bit of drinking involved, but there's a lot of candor because they all grew up together and they're coming back together. And it's set in just about a week after the rally turned deadly violent riot in Charlottesville. And they are talking about what it means to be conservative and Catholic in this country, also with President Trump in the White House. And as I was watching this, I think I've shared with you, when I go into a play that I'm not reporting on or having somebody on the show, I don't want to know anything about it. This one I kind of wished I had, so this is why I will share that it's written by Will Arbery, who grew up in Texas, a little bit in New Hampshire, but mostly in Texas, to a Catholic conservative family. His father is president of a Catholic conservative college.
Oh, okay.
So he's writing about what he knows, and he's playing out this dialogue that happens in the conservative Catholic community about what it means to be a conservative. Can you make space for LGBTQ people? Can you be respectful of abortion providers and friends who are for pro-choice, who are in your life? And so it ranges from this discussion that, well, how can we do that, to one of the characters is a Steve Bannon-spewing, Trump-believing, ultra-conservative who believes the war is coming. The war being the war liberals are waging or really have ignited because their liberals are cramming their thought, their groupthink, down into the voices of all of Americans. So this is a play that doesn't normally get presented in the American theater, I would argue. Certainly not on Boston stages, hardly in New York. And when it premiered in New York, it got a lot of attention. It was a Pulitzer Prize finalist. And so here we see this thought talked out on this stage, and it's a very talky play. There's not a lot of narrative arc or action here, but it is a lot of discussion and again teasing out something that we're not usually privileged to hear.
So it was a good night in the theater.
I thought it was a fascinating, very absorbing.
And the tickets start at $25.
Night in the theater.
Well, you go to Broadway
That's a
show.
really good night in the theater.
You're talking about $150 to be up on the ceiling practically. So this is a bargain. I know it's at the Caldor Pavilion, which is not that big, but it's big enough.
Well, which I always argue is great because you have a smaller space.
Yes.
You're closer to the stage, and you feel you're closer to this group of people that you're listening in on.
There was a fascinating piece in the New York Times about 2 weeks ago talking about how conservative Catholicism is becoming kind of the rage among young Republicans because of the absolutism. They like that. It's either black or white, it's red or green. There's no in the middle. There's no nuance that you just talked about. So when I read this, I thought it was interesting. They had that piece, and I wondered if it had anything. I'll have to go back and reread it now. If it had anything to do with this play or this whole level of discussion, because people that are on television, Laura Ingraham, who's on Fox, I'm not a fan of hers, but she's a very conservative Catholic, and there's a lot of very black and whiteism in conservative Catholicism, and a lot of anger.
And all of that comes to the fore. In fact, there's a conversation in the play about black and white. And yes, of course it's so definitive. Another character saying, well, no, I think we need to understand that things are more gray. I kind of, when I said we're not privileged to hear, because I was thinking, yes, we hear these conversations on Fox News all the time. But I think to some degree it's performative, as anything on television is, perhaps. But so this is maybe more of the conversation you hear in the green room at Fox News in New York. The things that are said when you're a little less guarded, a little less filtered, and you allow emotion to creep in a little bit more than you might on television.
Talking to Jared Bowen.
Okay, where are we going after this, Jim? I've lost my place.
We're going to a very famous artist whose dream was always to have his work displayed in the United States.
Oh, that's right, in New Bedford. This guy from the Azores. This is pretty exciting.
This guy from the Azores.
Well, he's talking about Ponta Delgada. People in Ponta Delgada. Of course, Ponta Delgada. There's at least one restaurant or bar in Fall River named Ponta Delgada. It was a famous place there. Yeah, because a lot of people left from there. It's a port city. Left the Azores to come to the United States.
Well, they're presenting. This is at the New Bedford Whaling Museum, an exhibition just through this weekend. It's beautiful. What a great weekend to get down there and be in New Bedford, right on the water too. So at the Whaling Museum, they're presenting the Azorean Spirit, the art of Domingos Rebelo. This is actually constructed by his grandson. So he was somebody who was immensely talented in the early part of the 20th century. He lived from 1891 to 1975. And as a teenager, people recognized his talent. He grew up in the Azores and without a lot of exposure to city life and a lot of education. So he was given a scholarship that got him out of Portugal and into Paris. And he was so talented, he was able to stay there for about 6 years. But he's in Paris at the time that Gertrude Stein is having her salons. The Picasso is roaming around. I mean, this is the time. If you could go back in art history, get in your time machine.
Time.
You want to go there to meet all of these people. And he comes
Or
up,
as Marjorie would say, some guy from Spain. Some artist from Spain.
Some wildly talented artist. Can't remember his name. And so we see him in this show working on faith, in his work depicting family, depicting fishermen. The fishermen in particular really struck me because you see these kind of craggy faces, you see their sweaters, and you can almost smell the seawater on them. You can tell the emotion in the connection that he had with his subjects to do this. One very famous painting that's not in the show because it is so famous that he's done is called The Emigrants, and we see the studies for that. And something that really connected with me is watching this mother embrace her son, and the look on the son's face as he knows he's leaving and probably won't ever see her again, because again, this is the early part of the 20th century. People went off and didn't necessarily come home or didn't have the means to come home. So it's very impactful work. They also do something very clever. I think they have his tunic, his linen shirt that he loved so much from his early days, and then his wife would just create the same shirt over and over again for him to paint in. And so I think it's a very, very engaging show, and it's sad because when war broke out in Europe, he went back to Portugal, and then dictatorship in Portugal basically cut his career to a close. Nobody outside of Portugal ever really saw him. So this is the effort of his grandson to make sure that his work becomes known and more widely seen around the world.
By the way, it's a great museum too, and it's a really interesting city that has really come a long way in recent years. 2 questions for you, Jared, before you go. 1, are you not hot in that jacket?
No, I'm
It is
freezing
boiling
today,
in
aren't
here.
you? I'm freezing.
Boiling.
Well,
Okay.
it's cold outside. My hands are cold.
Do you have a show?
I do have a show.
Friday?
Yeah.
What's on it?
I told you we've been working on a show all summer long.
Oh, you did? What is it?
So this week we're presenting shows in a different way now. So it's more of taking you in and giving you experience. And so our first piece this week will take you through the exhibition of Patrick Kelly, his fashion at the Peabody Essex Museum.
Neat.
So we explore this walking around, and we take you into augmented reality and a public art exhibition that's all around us right now. If you're in the Emerald Necklace that you can't see unless you have your device, we'll show you how to see it.
Wait a minute. The show will seem as if you are in an augmented reality yourself?
We'll show you how you see it. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
And
on the Emerald Necklace?
On the Emerald Necklace,
What part of it?
Yeah, it's all throughout different parts of it. Franklin Park, near the ponds, Leverett Pond, and
that must have been fun.
Yeah, it's very fun. So we do that, and then we have a recap, not unlike what we just did, of all the theater and whatnot to see, and we borrow from Boston Public Radio and the great musical performances that you have. So we'll feature that in the show.
You do?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
You signed a contract.
Do you show up here on Fridays?
I do, but I didn't know.
And what happens on Fridays?
We have Music Fridays, but I didn't know that some of the people that have performed here are going to be on your show. That's really exciting.
Because of the talented crew here who filmed these shows, the concerts here.
That was a brilliant idea.
Be able to share
it's going to be kind of immersive Jared this weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To some degree.
I like that.
Not too much there. Jamie was over there laughing.
How'd you like the augmented reality?
Repelled by the idea.
Was it fun?
It's very fun. It's fascinating. Yeah, that you're standing here. People are walking their dogs, running by, and you're looking at this piece of art right in front of you that's kind of all-consuming, glittering and shimmering, and they have no idea why you're responding the way you are because you're just looking at it through your phone, and they see absolutely nothing.
So 2 questions remain now. 1, can you say augmented reality without putting your hands up to your eyes and circling both of them? Try saying it.
Augmented reality.
Well, that's the first. Okay, thank you very much.
So you don't need the...
And number 2...
I didn't think I could do that.
While Marjorie was expressing, it appears to me, great gratitude for you including some of the music, I would have to say, in the most polite way, it's about damn time. Because I'm thinking about it, he comes onto this show and is promoting his stuff like nonstop. What's he doing for us? Nothing.
That is so
totally
not true.
Nothing.
That is.
What is he doing for us?
Jared and
I'm talking to her.
are
I'm
doing
talking to
a
her.
lot when he's not here, and you're doing a lot with him when
right.
I'm not
That's
there.
actually how I got the idea when I was filling in with you.
Is that really true?
That's what I do for you. I
That's
fill
a
in.
great
I
idea.
allow you to take vacation.
You fill in, and we are very grateful that he does.
We are, actually.
Yeah.
We're very grateful.
Also, often at the end of my show, I'm promoting myself, saying you can see me with Jim and Marjorie every whatever day I'm on,
That's
Tuesday.
right.
Oh, that's right. Whatever day it is.
Cross-pollination is very important in this business.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what we used to do? Like
Yeah.
you announce who is going to be there, you announce what the next segment that's coming up. That's very
Love that.
important.
And we got
Really-
through a whole segment without a Silence of the Lambs reference.
That's a very good point.
Oh, you know what? Somebody just emailed and said Clarice wasn't just in Silence of the Lamb. She was Rudolph's girlfriend in Rudolph the
She
Red-Nosed
was?
Reindeer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That wasn't who I was
Remember
referring
little
to, actually.
Clarice?
No, I actually don't.
Little Rudolph the
Yeah, but
Red-
can I tell you something?
She
When you're a
stood by
little
him.
kid and Rudolph bites her nose off, that was one of the most terrifying scenes for little kids. I still wake up. Oh, yes, it did.
No,
Jared,
he didn't bite the nose off because it was the red nose that got Santa
Whatever.
for the blizzard.
Jared, it's excellent.
Don't you remember that story?
Great to see you.
I remember I cried when the Bumble died. And
that's right.
Yeah, or you think he died. Spoiler alert.
And
Bye,
then
Jared.
The Island of Misfit Toys.
How long is this going to go on? Till like Thursday?
Maybe.
Can't you talk on the phone, you two? Or
okay.
See each other in the office?
We've been speaking
We
with
don't want to waste
Jared
our time
Bowen.
talking about Bumbles and Yukon Cornelius.
Yukon Cornelius, you know this very well.
Speaking of Bumbles, I have to repeat, we had Andy Borowitz with us yesterday.
Oh, there's Rudolph on the screen
The
there.
line that he quotes from Molly Ivins about Dan Quayle, former vice president.
Yeah.
If you put Dan Quayle's brain in a bumblebee, it would fly backwards, is one of the great lines of all time about one of the dumbest politicians who has ever walked the earth.
It's a really good book.
What about her line for Arnold Schwarzenegger?
What was that? I don't know what
it was. His face is like a condom filled with walnuts. Something to that effect, yeah.
Whoa.
It's very descriptive. He's very angular.
He is. Goodbye.
Yeah. Okay. We've been speaking with Jared Bowen, the new immersive
We've
Jared Bowen.
been speaking endlessly with Jared Bowen.
He's the executive RS editor at GBH.
Good to see you, Jared.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on the new show. I can't wait to see it, and of course to hear the music from BPR. That's very exciting.
It's not a new show. It's a reconfigure,
it's the immersive,
reimagined.
Reimagined. I like to call it the immersive Jared.
Okay,
I think
fine.
that I like that sound of that.
Thank you.
Anyway, up next we're going to talk to CNN's John King. He's going to be with us via Zoom for the latest in national political news. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
If you've got an old car, truck, boat, or other used vehicle you're looking to get rid of, there's a great way to support Boston's local NPR with it. Donate it to GBH to help fuel the news and reporting you trust. With a clear title, we can have the vehicle picked up from home, no hassle. And your donation could be eligible for a 2022 tax advantage. Find out more online at gbh.org/vehicle donation.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And the Worcester Art Museum, presenting Jewels of the Nile, where you can experience ancient Egypt in brilliant color through 300 pieces of jewelry displayed for the first time, now on view. More at worcesterart.org. And Boston Ballet, presenting My Obsession, the thrilling season opener with irresistible music from Stravinsky to the Rolling Stones, on stage at the Citizens Bank Opera House, October 6th to 16th. Tickets at bostonballet.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're live at the Boston Public Library. We'll be here on Thursday this week. Now, Friday, joining us now from inside CNN is John King, their chief national correspondent and host of Inside Politics. Weekdays at noon. Hello, John King.
Hello to you. I can yield my time back to Jared if Martin.
No, that's perfectly all right. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm sure you're a father. I'm sure you've watched Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer a few times yourself and know all about Bumble and Clarice and all that kind of stuff, right?
I like Marjorie. I've spent most of my life on the island of misfit toys. So.
There you go.
Literally and figuratively.
There you
That's
go.
right.
Who can't relate to that, John King? Thank you very much. So, getting back to the political news, this was a little disheartening to think, that former President Trump, of course, insists he still won the election, and some of the people around him still insist he won the election, despite the fact that he lost the election. Now we're finding that a whole bunch of Republicans that are running for office, governor and senators, won't say or refuse to answer whether or not they would respect the will of the voters in the upcoming elections. That's kind of creepy, isn't it?
It's a cancer, is what I call it, in the sense that you have a majority of Republican nominees for Senate. I think it's 19 of them. Or we have a great fact checker, Daniel Dale, here at CNN. You have candidates for Senate, candidates for governor, and I would argue, Jim and Marjorie, just as dangerous, if not even more dangerous, is candidates for Secretary of State, the people who count the votes and administer elections. And below that, candidates for state legislature, because that's the bench. The person who's running for the state legislature or county commissioner or some local office today is the rising star of tomorrow. I used the Barack Obama example, state senator in Illinois to the United States Senate to President of the United States. And this is a challenge for the Republican Party. And many Republicans who talk responsibly about these issues don't want to lead the charge every day. And they're kind of hoping the voters help them, if you will. And they're hoping that the election takes care of it for them. And there's zero evidence, whether these Republicans win or lose, there's zero evidence that even that would be a cleansing moment. That, I guess you can have the conversation that if a lot of these Republicans lose, will they wake up the day after the election and say, we can't do this anymore? We have to respect math. We have to respect fact. We have to respect the process and the rule of elections and how it works. Just given that it's everywhere, I'm not optimistic that even a repudiation by the voters would flush it out. But that is one of the big challenges. We count votes 7 weeks from today, 49 days now, midterm election.
What will happen? I mean, we still have, I don't know if the numbers are still, it was 1.70% of Republicans agreed that Donald Trump was the rightful president. So what happens if you have even 3 or 4 senators or governors who lose and say, I'm not, or secretaries of state who say, this was rigged, just what he said.
What happened with the presidency?
Well, I don't know what happens at the state level. I don't know. Does somebody become the next governor or the next senator, or does this go to the courts, or you know what I mean? Could it be delayed for weeks, or?
I think you raise several of the key questions in the sense that, are we going to have contested elections? We have a number of Republicans who say that if they lose, they don't necessarily respect the results. So are we going to have, everyone has the right to a legal recount if you're within a certain percentage, or if your campaign wants to pay for it. Every state has its own laws and you can do certain things. And we should not take that away from any candidate. Even sometimes we look at the numbers and we think this is ridiculous. It's okay. It's your right. It's your right. And if it's handled correctly and the right person pays for it, or you're eligible for the taxpayers to pay for it because it's that close, we should always respect that, because that's how the process works. The people get to take advantage of the appeals and whatever other options they have available to them. The troubling part is if you have candidates who refuse to accept the results and either decide, no, I won, or I will never respect or call illegitimate the person after. I think the cancerous effect, to use that term again, because I think you need to focus it that way, on our politics is terrible. I also think there's a domino effect. I mean, we're supposed to tell our kids, like, don't yell at the umpires. Respect the score.
Yeah.
When you lose, you lose. Even if you think you got robbed. That was a bad call. You shake hands and you come back the next day, right? You let it go. After you exhaust every appeal, you let it go. That you have to respect the rule of law. Ask Al Gore, who thinks he won a presidential election. And the Supreme Court ruled and he said, hey, this is the way it works. I think there's a domino effect outside of politics, just in terms of culture, respect, rule of law, process. So next time I run a yellow light, I can say it wasn't yellow. Next time the camera catches me speeding, I can say it lies. Where does this end? If you start questioning basic fact, basic process that everyone's agreed to, nothing's perfect.
Right.
But Donald Trump did not win. I mean, this is not even. I'm talking about this as if it's like, it's an open question. In terms of 2020, it's not an open question. There may be a race where it's a question, but you still have a process. Exhaust all your appeals, exhaust all your recounts, and then when you're done, you have to be done. If we can't have an end game, then we can't have a system. Every rule, every process, everything has to have an end. If you don't have an end, then we're in this debate forever, and it's just harmful.
By the way, the dreaded local angle here is Jeff Deal, originally, who's obviously the Republican running for governor against Maura Healey. He originally told, I can't remember if it's the New York Times or the Washington Post, that he had no comment on the question, which is incredible. And then his campaign spokesperson subsequently said, of course he'll accept the results unless there's some issue that's legitimate, which obviously he would pursue.
But correct me if I'm wrong, when he was with us, he wouldn't answer whether or not Joe Biden was the
Well, that's wrong. I asked
president.
him, not
He said
one,
he was-
not twice, no. 11 times I asked him. On the 11th time, I said, is he the legitimate president of the United States? And he finally said yes,
He did, okay.
yes, after being asked 11 times. Speaking of Jeff Deal, John, we have a conundrum in the state, at least as of the moment, it may change tomorrow, that I have never experienced. Marjorie and I have done a debate for virtually every statewide office every 4 years since we started working together, for virtually every single race, governor on down. We read about, obviously in Pennsylvania, there's a dispute between Oz and Fetterman about a debate. We know that Herschel Walker is full of it and keeps saying that Warnock is avoiding debates when in fact it appears to be Herschel Walker for understandable reasons. In Massachusetts, to our knowledge, as of this morning, other than Maura Healey accepting a debate with Jeff Deal in late October, not one candidate for one statewide office on the Democratic side has agreed to a debate. They all have significant leads in polls. I have to say, I am almost speechless about this in a state like this that we contend that we are so voter-centric. Is this an aberration of the current state of politics? Has this existed in other states and we just missed it here in Massachusetts? What's going on in 2022?
No, it is a growing and I would say, unhelpful trend in politics. You see fewer and fewer debates. You see fewer and fewer town halls. In defense of some politicians, when it comes to town halls, there have been security issues raised. We had the COVID pandemic, but I think that to use the rearview mirror as an excuse, we should revisit these issues constantly, right? Do we need to improve security so that people can have town halls? Can we do them in different ways? Can you do some of them virtually? If you have a legitimate security question, you could do it virtually, but campaigns are all about controls, and this, unfortunately, is a bipartisan thing. I know there are Democrats out there going to say, there's more Republicans ducking debates this year.
Not in Massachusetts.
That may well be true, but I just want to say broadly, we should expect our candidates, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, whether they're running for local county commission or governor of the Commonwealth, to answer questions. And if they want to haggle over the moderators, fine. Have a good fight over the moderators. But don't use the old, media bias, this, that, or the other thing. Figure it out. Find a way to do it. You want to run a state, or you want to run a county, or you want to be even just a local official. That's complicated, right? You're responsible for incredibly important things in people's day-to-day lives. You can figure out how to set a panel of moderators or the venue for a debate. If you can't figure that out, then you don't deserve the job. So figure it out. But I do think it's a dangerous trend where campaigns, especially campaigns that are leading, think we're in control of this. Let's keep control of this. That's a fear, right? That's a fear. This, to the same point you said when the spokesman cleared it up. The principal should have the courage to meet with voters in debates and in town halls. And it's what the principal says that matters, not what the spokesman says. I'm not criticizing the good, hardworking, honest, usually kids who work on campaigns who are trying to do their best. That's not my intent. But if there's a controversial issue, the person whose name is on the bumper sticker and on the ballot should be doing the talking.
I want to be clear just for the record, so there's no confusion here. Every Republican who's running for statewide office who we've invited to debate, either with me alone on television or with the two of us together, has said yes. And
Good.
Every Democrat so far has not given us a positive response.
And as you just said, I understand Maura Healey is talking about a debate at the end of October.
October 20th, when a lot of mail-in ballots will already be in.
Which I'm kind of surprised at, because it doesn't really seem fair to not have the debate before the voting begins. You know what I mean?
And when you think you get, I can understand the raw politics, right? I think I'm winning. I think I should stay on the safe path. How about respect your constituents? Give them a chance. Give them a couple of chances for you to answer questions. Why not?
So, John King, a couple of years ago, when we went down for Trump's inauguration for work, Marjorie and I went with our coworkers to Comet Ping Pong Pizza, which is where that guy who had heard one of the people who he admired say that there was a pedophile ring run in the basement of that actually fabulous pizza joint.
It was great.
And he came in with a weapon. A crowded, packed restaurant. We spoke to the general manager, fired in the air, luckily hit nobody. Well, there's a group that everybody listening to the show has heard of, QAnon, that basically believes our government is run by pedophiles. And it appears that Donald Trump is no longer dancing around whether he's a QAnon believer. At recent rallies, he appears to be all in, from what we understand.
There was a symbol of the crowd had a symbol of that's important to the Q crowd, and there are those who believe Trump was egging it on. I can't read his mind. We've had this conversation for too many years. So I can't pretend to try to read Donald Trump's mind. So I'll go back to what I said before. It is incumbent on the guy at the top of the letterhead, the leader, to lead. right? And Donald Trump is the letterhead at his rallies. He was the president of the United States. He's now still the most powerful voice in the Republican Party. And if you don't want certain things happening, you can shut them down.
To be clear, I thought Dana Milbank said in the Washington Post that they were actually playing at his rally the music that is the QAnon theme song, for lack of an expression. Is that not correct? Yeah, it is correct.
It was correct. It's correct. They played it at the rally. Now, it's not a QAnon created song. So could there be a misunderstanding? Mm-hmm. Again, you are responsible. I'm responsible for Inside Politics every day. You guys are responsible for this program. Sometimes the people who work for us, sometimes we make mistakes. Let me say that first. Sometimes we make mistakes. The human mouth and brain connection on live radio and live television can be interesting some days, right? Some days somebody who works for us makes a mistake too. I'm responsible. You're responsible. You have to own up for your team, right? You're the leader of it, and you fix things and you move on. So Donald Trump could put a stop to that. There's always this, he didn't know. We've lived through that. He didn't know about the roughhousing in the rally. He didn't know about this. It's his job to know. He's responsible.
So, John King, we have a story that has gone national here in Massachusetts, as you know very well. 48, I believe, migrants from San Antonio flown to Martha's Vineyard. They're now on Bourne and Cape Cod. The flight, courtesy of the governor of Florida, is appalling. I know I speak for Marjorie, and I assume most of our listeners, as appalling as we find the behavior of the Florida governor. There's a body of thought that suggests that this is really politically advantageous to him and the Republicans as we approach the midterms and as he approaches a possible run for the presidency. Do you subscribe to that notion?
Potentially. There's no question. Republicans understand that a midterm year they thought was going to be a wave year for them has become a challenging year for them. That does not mean Republicans aren't going to do well, but they don't have the strong wind at their backs that they did if we were having this conversation in March or April or even May of this year. So what has happened? The Dobbs decision is the primary driver of suburban Republicans, suburban or more moderate independent voters thinking, what is this election about? What is my primary choice here? If I give Republicans power, will they further restrict abortion rights? Or if I want to at least stop the slide in abortion rights, do I need to keep the Democrats in power? That has become not the number one issue. There's still inflation, and that's in the news today, and it will be over the next few days. But there's a wrestling match now for the issues debate, whereas it was almost all in the Republican favor if we went back a few months. It was some border, some crime, mostly inflation, Biden's performance as president. Now there's a competition for Republicans. So what are they doing? The red state governors have every right to raise their hand and say, we have a problem. The border governors, that's every right to raise their hand. Look at the new numbers put out just by the Biden administration about apprehensions last month, past 2 million immigration arrests at the border this year. It's never passed 2 million before. We're having this conversation in September. They have every right to say we have a problem. And they have every right to make the argument, you can agree or disagree at home, that they don't think the administration has done enough and it is not proactive enough and is not helping them enough. That's a fair debate. Is it fair then to put people, their point is, since you're ignoring us, we're going to show you people in blue states what our problem is like, and we're going to fly these migrants to you. There's a competence question for the Biden administration. I think that's a fair debate. There's a compassion question now for these Republican governors. Is that the way to do it? Is that the way to treat people as political props? But is it advantageous? Ron DeSantis is advertising about this in his reelection campaign, Jim. He thinks he's going to win. The voters speak in 7 weeks, so we'll see what happens. But Ron DeSantis thinks he's going to win. He thinks he's going to win comfortably. And so he's using his campaign this year as a laboratory for themes for a potential presidential run 2 years down the road. Again, our conversation in the middle of November will be more informed because the voters will have given us their opinion on these important questions. But Mitch McConnell talked about this on the floor of the Senate today, complimenting the Republican governors who are shipping these migrants to Democrat-run areas. Mitch McConnell would not be talking about on the Senate floor a man who himself concedes, I'm not sure if we're going to win, take back the Senate, even though it's 50-50, and 6 months ago, Republicans were going to get 52 or 53. Now, that's an open question. He wouldn't be talking about it unless he thought it played to his advantage politically.
I skipped something. I just want to say, you, as you always are, so respectful. You didn't correct an omission on my part. When I said he thinks it's good for the midterms and for his presidential candidacy, what I skipped was he's running for re-election in those 7 weeks. And Charlie Crist, the former governor, former Republican, I should say, is his opponent. So he's got a gubernatorial campaign he's got to worry about, too.
But there's just one last thing about DeSantis that was from the Dana Milback column in the Washington Post, saying that he is not just limiting his disdain to refugees from Venezuela. He ran a campaign ad this month that featured some guy named Pastor Larry Jinks, who said some very anti-Semitic things about Jews and the Messiah and stuff. Is anti-Semitism a winning strategy in Florida?
They always wash their hands of that, saying I wasn't aware of those particular comments, and he or she, plays importantly here. But you saw DeSantis on the road campaigning for the gubernatorial nominee in Pennsylvania, Doug Mastriano, who, just look at his record. I don't even want to talk about it in the sense that the specifics are, in the sense just some of the, white nationalist events, controversial issues. So, again,
January 6th.
It is January 6th, election denier. One of the questions I often ask, Trump gave a platform to a woman at one of his recent rallies, not the most recent one, to a woman who stood up and defended the January 6th rioters and said one of them was one of her nephews. You can, I think, judge politicians by the company they keep. I think that's a fair test. There should be many tests. It should mostly be about the issues and their competence to do the job. But I think the people they use to push buttons in campaign ads, to motivate voters in a midterm election climate, I think that is any voter who decided, whoa, I like this, and this, but I can't take that. I think that's a perfectly fair test.
John, good to see you. As always, be well.
Thank you, John.
Go Bruins.
Go Bruins.
Yeah,
Boy,
somebody...
is he given up.
Okay. We've been speaking with CNN's Chief National Correspondent John King, host of Inside Politics, which you can catch weekdays, Monday through Friday at noon. We watch it every day. Coming up, we spoke earlier in the show about the death of Fred Franzia. He is the mind behind the cheap wine label, known affectionately at Trader Joe's as $2 Chuck. Next week,
in our next installment of the She-Lection Midterm Series, we're heading to Arizona, where it's a toss-up for the governor's seat. And no matter which candidate wins, she will be the 5th woman to serve as governor of Arizona. I'm Melissa Harris Perry, and that's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and the law firm of Davis Malm, taking care of your business from startup to sale. Learn more at davismalm.com. That's DAVISMALM.com. Davis Malm. Lean, agile, strategic. And Guava Health, a personal health tracker that keeps your health information in one place. You can find records, see health trends, and track your symptoms and meds. Available on Android, iOS, and guavahealth.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Mark Regan, live at the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Once again, we will be here Thursday this week, not our usual Friday. One addition, we were talking about the Tina Turner play downtown that coincidentally Jared and I are both going to tomorrow night. This Friday on Boston Public Radio, we'll have Zoran Villanueva, who's one of the women playing Tina Turner, and Ann Nesby, who's also in the show and who's also written hits for the likes of, well, you may have heard of these people, Patti LaBelle and Gladys Knight. So we're really excited about having them on. As Marjorie said, Fred Franzia once said, "Who says we're lower priced? We're the best priced. The others, I think, are overpriced." As we discussed earlier in the show with Corby Kummer, Franzia, the mind behind Charles Shaw wine label, affectionately known as $2 Chuck, has died. We want to hear from you about your favorite Chuck memories, if you can remember them. Not just the favorite of college wine and cheese parties, $2 Chuck was a staple among Trader Joe's shoppers for years, making wine more accessible to all. So, do you have fond memories of your experiences with $2 Chuck? We'd like you to share them with us at 877-301-8970. I have to say, when I didn't have much money, I not only bought it because it was cheap, I didn't think it was bad.
Neither did I.
I thought it was fine.
So did I.
I mean, I didn't know wine from wine, and maybe I don't. I was just going to say, I don't know if I do now, but I thought it was perfectly fine and perfectly drinkable.
That's right. You just couldn't bring it to anybody's house if you were invited over for dinner.
That's a very good point.
That would be very bad to show up with a $2 Chuck at somebody else's house. But yeah, I think the wine. I mean, there's a lot of cheap things at Trader Joe's. You know, I always notice that when I go half a block from my house to Whole Foods, somehow I buy half the amount of food, and it costs me more than it does when I go
but $2 for a bottle of wine, and even when it's up to, I haven't bought it recently, it's supposedly $4, $3.99 instead of $1.99.
Yeah.
$4 is still pretty cheap.
That's right.
You also use it for cooking wine, I should say.
Use it for cooking
But
wine.
we want to know if you've had experiences, if you're willing to admit that a staple of your wine consumption through the years, maybe even now, was Charles Shaw, $2 Chuck at Trader Joe's. You know, there's like a $3 wine at Whole Foods, by the way, speaking of.
There is?
Or maybe $4. It is really cheap. It's usually when you walk in, you see it next to the produce and stuff, really cheap, comparable. I don't know what it's called.
That must be the one in Cambridge, because
Yeah,
most of
it's
them
River Street.
Most of them don't serve wine.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
River Street has
It's an American
wine.
tragedy.
877-301-8970. Give us a buzz and let us know what your experience is with Charles Shaw, I guess is the formal name. $2 Chuck has been.
It kind of reminds me of the days when I used to make these horrible things for hors d'oeuvres, you know,
Like
because
what?
it were cheap. Well, this is really disgusting when I think about it now, but I used to do this all the time. Cream cheese rolled inside bologna. You ever
What
have
is
that,
wrong?
Jim?
Of course I have. It's one, other than pigs in blankets.
Would
it's
you
one
ever
of my
bring
favorite.
that? Would you ever bring that to anybody's house for dinner? No, all these disgusting things I used to do when I was a kid. So things I
I'm
just
gonna
served
make
when
that
people
this
came
weekend.
over.
I
Oh my
love
God,
those.
it was absolutely disgusting. It was absolutely disgusting. Yeah, I used to make a lot of, and of course the deviled eggs. Those were always cheap. You could always make those eggs and
you could really make
and
deviled
mayonnaise.
eggs,
Well,
by the
I
way.
can. I mean, Jared just left, but we had a contest.
We did,
Jared,
on air.
Callie Crosty and I had a deviled
What
egg
place
contest.
did you come in? I'm sorry.
I came in last.
You came in dead
I came in last.
yes.
I'm not a cook. I'm not a very domestic person. I'm trying to be better in my older years. But I think I don't know anything about wine. I just know, if I like something. But the other beauty of $2 Chuck is, especially if you're living alone and you're not a heavy drinker, a bottle of wine, you open the bottle of wine, it starts to go bad right from the moment you open it.
Mm-hmm.
The beauty of the $2 Chuck.
Who cares?
Exactly. Exactly. So it makes life a little bit easier.
Let's take some calls, Marjorie.
Let's go to Alice on Cape Cod. Hello,
Hey, Alice, welcome.
Thank you for calling. You are first.
You are welcome. So my story with $2 Chuck is that on a French barge trip, we met some couples from California and became pretty close friends in that we would travel back and forth to each other's homes, and wine was always a central topic because wine was the point of the barge trip. So on one visit to us, we had to provide an expensive Cabernet and an inexpensive Chardonnay. And the California couples had to bring an inexpensive Cabernet and an expensive Chardonnay. So it was a blind tasting. All of the labels were covered. My son-in-law took care of it. And long story short is, the only rule was the California people said that the Cabernets had to be open 45 minutes before we did the testing.
Let them breathe.
So we did.
That's right. You have to let them breathe.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
Right. Let them breathe.
Okay, good.
So lo and behold, you can guess which one was the favorite among all eight of us.
I love that. And were they
And that
appalled
was
when
the
they found out it was $2 Chuck?
Wait a minute.
It was a blind taste test,
Alice,
and they picked
was it
$2 Chuck.
Was it the Chardonnay $2 Chuck or the Cabernet $2 Chuck?
No, because we did. I'm sorry, it was the Cabernet.
I knew it. Yeah.
$2 Chuck.
Yeah.
That won.
So,
And
Alice,
after
were these people mortified when they found out, or no?
No, we didn't have the $2 Chuck. They brought the $2 Chuck.
I got it. I got it now.
We had to do the expensive one and the inexpensive Chardonnay, and so it was. They were quite pleased with themselves that they had fooled all of us.
I would be too. Alice, that's a great story. Thanks for sharing it. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
So we did a wine tasting, right? You and I for the station. Remember we had the wines?
Yeah, fundraising
and you
thing.
learn how you're supposed to roll. You're supposed to.
You
kind
were
of
really
swish-
good at that. I had
swish
no
around.
idea how to swish
Yeah,
till then.
and then you're supposed to sniff it. And then you're supposed, before you taste it, you're supposed to swish it around your mouth. Now, when you go out to dinner, I mean, can you ever,
I always say do it to somebody else. Because you know why? Because I'm so embarrassed. When you swish around, that woman who was a sommelier who worked with us, she taught us how not to spill the wine out of the glass.
Right.
But aren't you worried about spilling the wine out of the
No,
glass?
I'm worried about looking like a jerk.
Like a jerk, yeah.
Sniffing and tasting and then saying, well, this wasn't really up to my standards.
Speaking of jerks, I told you, my father
Your
used
father,
to send back
I knew you were gonna say
bottles of
this.
wine. I was never as mortified. When I was a little kid, I cringe now. They'd do the whole deal with him. He'd sniff it. He'd twirl it around. And then he'd say, what kind of person sends back a bottle of wine?
A jerk.
Let me tell you.
I don't mean to disparage your father, but
may he rest in peace.
It must have been very difficult for you, Jim. That's
It
all I
was
can
very
say.
difficult for me. Thank you.
Kirsten and Winthrop, thank you for calling.
Go ahead, Kirsten. What's up?
Jim is traumatized.
I am.
Hi, how are you both?
Excellent.
Day. So my mother actually is also a sommelier, brilliant wine connoisseur, and something that she taught me is knowing when to drink the wine and when to spend the money. In college, and as well as a young adult, I would drink, now we call, I guess, $4 stuff all of the time, but this day, I still use it in my 6 Marsala, and
We're losing you.
Yeah, we got a bad
Kirsten,
connection, Kirsten.
by the way, I use $2 Chuck or the equivalent of Whole Foods for cooking all the time.
Yeah, you don't want to do.
It's far cheaper. You know when you buy those little bottles of cooking wine?
Yes.
We didn't cut you off, Kirsten. It's just a rotten connection. Sorry, I'll let you go.
I don't think they're very good.
No, but I'm saying it's a lot cheaper to buy one of these cheap whole bottles of wine. It's like 2 or 3 times the size for the same price.
Well, I bought those little bottles of wine. I don't think they're very good. Paul from Worcester says that he likes the Pinot Grigio and the Shiraz. The Charles Shaw wines tend to be, however, Jim, highest in sulfates.
Sulfides,
thank you. But it is the Hafenraffer of wines, cheap and drinkable for the price. And somebody else says, I love serving $2 Chuck to wine snobs.
Well, that's pretty
Unbeknownst to them, they invariably gush about what a nice wine it is. It's an incredibly drinkable, cheap wine, a go-to for Xmas gifts in large numbers.
Well, before we go back to the calls, the thing that I learned from the store, was the New York Times did the obit that we read for Corby? Yes. Is the thing, I assumed it was just cheap, crappy wine with cheap grapes. He buys remainders or leftovers. So it varies all the time. But a lot of the stuff you're drinking may be really high quality wine, which is why it tastes as good as it does, no?
That's right. That is exactly what he did. And he thought it was great that the wine snobs were all appalled. He thought it was terrific.
Michelle, you're next on Boston Public Radio. What's up?
Hi.
Hi.
The wine is amazing. We had a lot of fun with it. Apparently, we got an echo here. I apologize.
We're good on our end. Keep talking.
Okay, absolutely. So, in the early 2000s, I was the president of the Art Association, Art Committee at Marblehead Arts Association. And $2 Chuck was fantastic for our art shows because we didn't have a lot of money, but had great receptions because of red, white. It was fantastic.
Well, I mean, there's another use, and affordable and drinkable and paired well with the art up there in Marblehead. Michelle, thank you very much for the call.
Well, can you tell? I mean, I get. Well, you've told me about some of the exquisite bottles of wine.
Well, I don't know if I should name names, but there's a very
name names,
well-known person. Should I? I don't know if I should. I
think you should.
Okay, a long while ago, Ernie Bach Jr.
Ernie Bach Jr.
Brought, when he was on, I had him on TV, I think it was around the time that he endorsed Trump. We were talking about Trump in 2016. And he brought me a bottle of wine that I thought was very nice. It wasn't like a price of admission. He was just doing it as a kind thing. And I took it home. This is the part I shouldn't admit, but I assume everybody does this. What did I do right away?
You Googled it.
I Googled it, of course. And it was rather expensive. Let's say that.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't violate any company policy. If I did, I'll give it back. But in any case, I don't know anything about wine. I know about this wine. There is every kind of wine, $2 Chuck and $15 bottles and $20 bottles. And then this is almost like a different genetic species of wine. For those who can afford really high quality wine, which this obviously
It does taste different to you?
It is.
Yeah, I figure it's a psychosomatic thing with me. I can't tell the difference. If somebody tells me it's expensive wine, I think it tastes better. If they tell me it's a cheap wine, I think it doesn't.
Well, it's
all I know
also,
is it's gone bad. That's
the
all I
other
do
problem,
know.
well, same with me. But you know what the other problem is?
What?
When you're drinking, I'm sure you'd have this. If you're drinking really expensive wine, which I've done like twice in my life, you're pricing out every glass, even if you didn't pay for it. And you're saying, I could buy a small car for, you know what I mean? Kind of thing. It just doesn't feel right, even though it tastes fabulous.
Jody from Rockport, thank you for calling.
Hey, Jody, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
I wanted to say that a friend of mine told me about the wine, and we went into Boston. We'd make the trip from Rockport, always go and get the $2 chuck, and then we'd go to the Museum of Fine Arts or someplace like that afterwards. But it was always our excuse for going to Boston, and I was not a connoisseur on wine at all, but we really enjoyed that $2 chuck.
What was that, like a cheap buzz to get you started? Was that the concept?
I guess so.
Well, obviously it worked. Jody, thanks for the call. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Listen to this one. My frugal sister-in-law, as a means to lower the cost of her Seaport District wedding, bought a couple hundred bottles of $2 chuck, replaced all the labels with a personalized wedding label, and served it at all the tables in lieu of restaurant bottles because it was a gift from their friend's vineyard in France. Lie. She said
good.
big bucks. Claimed it was from their friends.
Would you do that? I'm saying, would you do that?
No, I would not do that.
Why not?
Because this is, you know, like if you're going to buy a couple of hundred bottles of $2 chuck to save money at a wedding. I had a friend who had a kid that got married in the middle of the week to save money because they wanted to get married like on a Tuesday night.
A lot of people do that.
Well, it's not that much fun for the guests because you have to go to work the next day.
What do you have to tell
or
the people Saturday when it's Tuesday? Is that what you're saying?
No, but you go to this wedding. But you know what they did for their flowers?
No.
They went to Home Depot the day of the wedding and they just bought all these potted plants that were really pretty and put them on the table.
Well, yeah, that upset you too?
No, I thought that was a great idea, but I don't think I want to have a wedding on Tuesday. Really? Don't you want to have a wedding on Saturday or Friday so you can have time to recover? And by the way, speaking of recovering, Des from Jamaica Plain says $2 chuck is a terrible headache the next day. Worst hangover of my life.
You know, but you know why that is? Because she is of the opinion, which I was until I read this piece, that it's cheap, crappy wine. But at least, according to the New York Times account, for more often than not, it is not. So we are done. Thank you for your $2 chuck.
Okay.
When was the last time you had $2 chuck?
I would say at least a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I've moved up to
birthday?
$5 wine now, Jim.
You have?
Yeah, like at $5.99. They have a lot of great ones for $5.99 and $6.99 at Trader Joe's. I have no idea if they're any good or not, but you know they're good enough. Okay, thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast, which is aptly named Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by our medical ethicist Art Kaplan, Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Young, travel guru Rick Steves. I'd love to talk to him. He's so upbeat. Republican nominee for Attorney General Jay McMahon, who of course is running against Andrea Campbell that we already had on, and naturalist author Cy Montgomery, who's also very uplifting.
You know why I'm
to talk
dying to talk to Art? I'm dying to talk to all of them. Art has been telling us for years that multivitamins are a total waste of money and a scam. Did you see the report?
Yeah.
Recently?
They helped you in your old age, or they help you fight out dementia or something like
to
that?
fight off dementia. So that'll be
Yeah.
on our list for Art tomorrow.
Okay, we want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Mackenzie Farkas, additional support provided by Gia Orsino, Brendan Deedy, and Kenrick Mercado. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. We want to give special thanks to the BPL engineering team who rescue us every day, Sai Patel, Steve Baracci, and Angelica Marrero.
But you solved your own problem on the phone today.
I did. It was an
a great
unbelievable breakthrough.
historic moment.
I fixed my own phone. There was a little problem with my own phone. It was amazing.
By the way, thank you all for coming. We really appreciate you coming to the library. What's that again? Oh, okay. I was about to tell you the former mayor of San Juan was joining me, Mayor Cruz, to discuss Puerto Rico, but she just canceled.
Oh.
So she will not be with me tonight.
Oh.
That is sad.
Poor Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a few years ago.
Remember her, by the way, taking on Donald Trump
Took on
when
Donald
she's
Trump.
not Mount Holyoke?
It was 4 or 5 years ago that happened.
5 years to the day today of Hurricane Maria.
Horrible.
In any case, we'll rebook her. So the only thing I do know is one of our favorite people is joining me tonight to discuss transportation, about which he knows everything, and the state of politics and the status of our democracy, that would be the former governor of Massachusetts, Michael Dukakis.
Oh,
he's with me
terrific.
tonight. And since he's not running for anything, as far as I know, we can both say we both love this guy. He's got a lot of wisdom. He's going to share it tonight at 7 o'clock on Greater Boston.
And you know something?
Yeah.
I've never seen a guy look better at his age in my life.
Mid-80s, he's doing really well, and he's a terrific guy.
I'm Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Brady.
Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again for coming down to the Boston Public Library. We appreciate it. Hope you have a great afternoon and hope you have time to tune in tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.